Hey everyone, hopefully you are hearing me loud and clear as per the usual. I'm just going to wait and see, make sure that I'm seeing everything on my end before we get started. I feel like I'm reading yep, I'm getting everything on my end. I just want to make sure that, yep, here it comes. There it is. Okay. So let's go ahead. Actually, let me just do this right before I get started. Put this in here. Okay, and let's go ahead and say hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live class. What am I doing here? I'm trying to hide something. Oh, whatever. Oh, no, I needed that back. Okay, so hello, welcome, everyone. I hope you guys have had a good week. I'm going to go ahead, I guess, and just do my intro real quick, right? So, welcome everyone to today's lockdown live weekend workshop. I think that's what I'm going to call this series that I'm doing. I promise I'm not sick. I just have a little bit of allergies going on because trapped inside, you know how it is if you have allergies. But welcome to today's live class. I am so excited that you're here. If you are new to me, hello, I'm your host, Alexis, also known as Miss Trenchcoat all across the internet. I'm an online entrepreneur who helps overwhelmed women manage their time, energy, and expectations so they can get all their ideas out of their head onto paper and get down to business, creating their dream life. So, welcome. You are in the right place if that sounds like you. And if you are one of my replay viewers watching the replay of this workshop, I also want to say hello to you. Welcome. Thank you for joining this class. I want to remind you that you can still be interactive, even if you're not here with us live, by leaving comments down in the comment section. And I will get back to those because I love seeing the comments, after a class is over. I still make sure to check those. And if you are interested in this class, if you like this class and you want to see more, I'm going to leave a link down below in the description box for my live class schedule so you can check when my next live workshop is, when I'm going live next, so you can join with me live. So for all of you guys who are here, welcome, welcome, welcome. I know there's so many of you here. I'm so excited. Please make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Feel free to share it out. If you've noticed, this is the second week in a row that I have gone live, and it is my intention right now that through, the duration, hopefully, of the, stay at home, shelter in place guidelines, that I will be able to go live with you every weekend on Saturday afternoon and bring to you a live class. I think this is just something fun that we can do on the weekends together since, now don't the weekends feel a little bit meaningless? I mean, for me, not very much has changed in my life, but I know for a lot of you, right, you aren't doing the same things and the same activities that you once were on the weekends. So I thought that this was my way to give back to you guys. And after the success of last week's class, which was that business planning workshop, I just was like, you know what, so energized. I'm like, I have to come and do more of these. So I am. So that is what we're doing today. And today's class, of course, is all about personality tests, my favorite personality tests, especially for those of you who may be business owners or business oriented or entrepreneurs or who want to start something. Personal development is so important to, I think, everyone, but particularly to business owners as well. So before we actually jump into this class, which is super long, actually, there's so much information in this. I realized I probably should have broken this down, but I wanted to kind of do like one big class where we talk about all these. It is probably going to be a 2-hour class, just warning you, probably over that, right? So I foresee this being much longer than last week was. So hopefully you have the time and space. And if not, there's a replay and you're going to be able to watch the replay, right? So let me go ahead and give my shout outs to those of you who are joining me live today. I'm so excited. There's so many of you guys on live. Let me say hello to everyone. Good morning from Tacoma, Washington. I am Four Birds. Tess in Morgantown, West Virginia, welcome. Nikki from the UK, welcome. Nikita in India. Faith in, I guess, Park Forest, if that's where you're from. Welcome, welcome. Alex from South Carolina, welcome. Jenny, well, I'll skip the last name. Jenny says, I'm coming in loud and clear. Excellent. Edie from Maryland, welcome back, Edie. Let's see, my three. Okay, she said that she's hearing me fine. Excellent. Naomi in New Jersey, your neighbor to me. I'm in Eastern Pennsylvania. Sam, hello. Welcome, Sam from Arkansas. Teresa from New York City. Anna from Colorado. And Teresa and Plan with Michelle from Coachella, California. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I heard Coachella was canceled this year. I wonder why. So welcome to everyone. As you guys join, feel free to go ahead and leave me comments. Let me know who you are, where you're from. Jamila from Philadelphia, welcome, welcome, neighbor. Liana from Brooklyn, welcome. And everyone, please go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. It just helps the algorithm on YouTube make sure that this video has been pushed out to more people. And I really appreciate it, right? Because you guys have probably seen my channel. I think I have decent following on my channel, but I don't have the best performance in the algorithm. And I know that's my own fault for not always creating the most consistent content, but I am really committed to serving you guys some awesome classes for free, right? All you have to do is join, give this video a thumbs up, continue supporting me and my business in whatever way you can. And I'm more than happy to be putting these on for you guys. So, okay. Like we did last week, if you guys remember, I would like to start this class with a little bit of intention setting because I do think setting intentions is so important. So I'm going to go ahead and try to like tone myself down here for a minute. And we're going to do a little bit of like a live breathing, intention setting, little mini meditation. If you guys are ready for that, we'll do that right before we jump into the slides. So what I want you guys to do, very similar as last week, if you were with me, I want you guys to sit up in your chair wherever you are. If you're sitting on a couch or on the floor, feel free to sit cross-legged if that's more comfortable for you. I want you to sit as straight up as you can with your hands to your sides. Up on a desk is fine if you're sitting on a desk like me, with your palms facing upwards. We're going to push our shoulders back, square them up, make sure our chest is really opened, right? We want to open that up. And we're going to start some deep breathing, right? We're going to breathe in through our nose. Hold it at the top for 2-3 seconds and exhale through our mouth. Do you guys feel the shift? I love doing that. Breathe in again. Hold. 3. Release. And one more time together. Breathe in through the nose. Hold it at the top. 2, 3. Release. And you guys can continue that pattern. I'm just going to quickly set an intention for today's class for each of you. So my purpose in creating and sharing this workshop today is to help bring you closer to yourself so that you can find clarity and purpose in the areas of your life that may need it. My intention is that taking some time to go inside and do some introspection will help us see ourselves in a new light and bring that light of clarity outside of ourselves to create a better life. So that is my wish for you today. That is my prayer and my intention for you. And with that, let's jump into today's workshop. So I'm going to go ahead really quickly and get myself set up for that. Need to close that. I can see, the comments down here, which is good. We're going to go into a full screen as per the usual. Oops, what have I done? That's that one. Oh, one thing, let me take that down for a second. Okay, and I hope you guys are seeing that good. And I do have my little guy, not my little guy, me, my little face. I moved myself up to the top corner. I thought that might be a better placement for you guys as we do this. So, oh no, wait. You guys do not see me. Uh-oh. You guys, did I mess this up? Oh no, I didn't. Wait, I see it. Oh, I didn't mess it up. Sorry, I had my screen paused on my phone, so I thought that I still had my intro screen on, but I don't. Here we go. We're moving into today's class, and I can see everything fine here. I'm actually going to just mute this. I want to just be able to watch the chat as we go through because I don't have it on the computer right here with me. So actually, can I minimize this a little more? Yeah, I can. Minimize you more. Thank goodness. Okay, that's much better for me. Okay. Where are we? Just want to make sure I'm live here. Okay, good. Excellent. Okay, so welcome to today's live workshop. I was calling this class Know Thyself, but basically we're going to be working through some awesome personality tests that I absolutely love: the Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, and Four Tendencies. Hopefully you guys are familiar with those. If not, I'm going to give you guys a really great crash course into those right now. So what are you going to learn today? Today, you're going to learn some of my favorite personality typing systems that I believe all business owners should know. And of course, this goes outside of business owners as well. Anybody who's interested in personal development is going to get a lot out of this class. But I think personally that business owners, specifically entrepreneurs, really should be thinking about this information maybe more than the average person because of all of the struggles and things that, business owners go through. So the classes, the tests that we're going to be talking about in class today are the Enneagram, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, and the Four Tendencies test by Gretchen Rubin. I also want to talk to you guys today a little bit more about my CEO strategy planner, because understanding your strengths and opportunities as a business owner, as a CEO, will help you make better plans, develop better systems, and create a stronger business. So yes, part of today's workshop at the very end is me showing you something awesome and valuable that you might consider buying, but there's no pressure to buy, and you will still get tons of value from this class if you keep an open mind. Some things you should know. The goal of the process itself that we're going to go through today is self-awareness and personal transformation. So I heard a stat that I thought was unbelievable. It said that psychologists believe that only about 5% of people truly are self-aware, meaning that they understand what they do and why they do it, right? But having this information, right, knowing more about yourself, trying to be more self-aware, it'll empower you to take back control of your life and stop living from your default neural network. I talk a lot about, your neural network being basically your brain. The way it's wired is very much set in stone. That's why we often do the same things over and over again in our lives. We're filled with doing the same things and we're getting the same results, right? That's that Einstein quote that says, the definition, is it Einstein? I forget. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over on expecting different results. So we live from this neural network pattern of, things always being the same, and therefore we always see the same things, we get the same things from our results. But self-awareness and introspection is really a way to take back control of our neural net and really make conscious decisions that help benefit our life and help us advance ourselves. There's also this quote that, honestly, this quote is probably the ultimate inspiration for why I'm even doing today's class. It's from a researcher, doctor who I am obsessed with, and I love reading all his books. His name is Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he says that your personality creates your personal reality. So we're doing all these personality tests so we can understand ourselves better, because our personality as it is what is causing the results in our life. It's what is creating our reality for us. So if we can be aware of what we're doing and make some changes, we can start seeing that transformation into a new personal reality as well. Something I want you guys to know before we begin is that none of these tests are perfect, right? But I think that things don't have to be perfect to reveal truth, right? So I think that we can use these imperfect methods to come up with ideas and inspiration that leads us closer and closer to our personal truth. And so I think that's really important, because I know a lot of times I have a lot of resistance to this, actually, because of my personality type that we're going to talk about as we go through this class. But my personality type is the kind of personality that doesn't like being put in a box and sees the flaws in things like this. And so even for me, it was hard for me to wrap my head around some of these tests in the past, because I felt like they weren't perfect, so why do it? But obviously I've come to feel differently about some of these, and I just want you guys to keep that in mind, that none of these tests are going to be 100% right. Your personality is a blend of all the different types of aspects that we're going to be talking about. So just keep that in mind. It's just about self-awareness and seeing what's dominant in your personality. And here, like I said here, it took me a while to type myself with Enneagram specifically, right? This was something where with the Enneagram, I actually originally typed, well, this is funny, really quick, funny story. My friend who got me into the Enneagram, okay, her name's Kelsey Chapman. She hosts the Radiant podcast. She was on this, I did a class with her actually like a few years ago too, where we talked a little bit about Enneagram here on YouTube, but she got me into Enneagram. And when we first met, she typed me correctly. She's like, you are a this number. And because my personality type is the one that's like, do not tell me what I am, I resisted. And she and I went through the process of trying to type me for a while, and we finally landed on a number that was not the right type for me. I ended up reading a book about the Enneagram that really went into things in depth, and it really helped me understand what my real type was. So just want you guys to know that don't feel the pressure to fit yourself into a box. Today is just about exploration. Who knows, you might have gone through some of these tests before and learned something new, and now you feel like you might be a different type for these tests. So, things can change. Your personality and your identity does change to some extent. So yeah, just know that none of these are perfect. Some of these tests are very hard for some people to be able to type themselves. This is normal. Don't set the expectation that this is going to be a perfect class today in terms of aha moments. Also, something else I want to be very, very clear on is that none of this information that I'm sharing today is mine, and I'm not a certified trainer or test administrator for any of these tests. I know some of them actually you can go through training things to be certified in Enneagram or Myers-Briggs, but I've never gone through any of those. I'm literally just sharing things from like anecdotal experiences, and I'm synthesizing what I know about these tests to give you insight, and I will be blending like some things that are from the actual sources and some things that are my own observations synthesizing information. So all the resources and sources that I used in this video to create this slide deck are linked in the description. So I highly recommend checking it out. I have links to where you can go to get the tests done if you want to actually do real tests. We are going to go through tests today that we're going to do as a group, but obviously I'm not going to be able to go as in depth as some of the online tests are. So definitely check those out. And yeah, definitely read more about yourself and your type from these extra resources. I also link some books that I recommend for additional clarity and insight. So definitely check all that stuff out. Just know none of this is mine. I didn't come up with any of this. I'm literally regurgitating information, synthesizing new information for you guys to see this, right? So I wanted to also share you guys some other really wonderful things that I kind of found during this process. There is this lovely quote from Isabel Myers-Briggs, who is one of the co-creators of Myers-Briggs, that I think actually perfectly describes what we're trying to do today, not just in Myers-Briggs, but with all personality tests, not just the ones we're talking about today, but all personality testing and introspection. It says, the understanding of type can make your perceptions clearer, your judgment sounder, and your life closer to your heart's desire. And that's really what we're trying to do here, right? We're really trying to understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, so that we're clear on why we make choices. We're clear on when we make judgments, we understand the places where those judgments are coming from, and we're able to bring ourselves more in line with our dream life, right? Love this quote. Also, I want you to know the process of introspection can be challenging and filled with resistance. This is so normal. So if you feel any resistance during this process, I want you to take note of it, because it's something that's holding you back. And I totally recommend like writing down like negative thoughts or resistance, or just any time maybe through this class and maybe through the process of introspection where you're feeling like you're getting negative, right? Or you're feeling like, oh, I can't do this. Anything that's not like totally positive can-do attitude, write it down and evaluate it, because honestly, that is probably tied to some limiting belief that's holding you back in some area of your life from having a new personal reality, right? So I want you to keep note of that. Also love this quote from Abraham Maslow that says, what is necessary to change a person is to change his perception of himself, right? So I think that within the context of what we're doing today, we are trying to see ourselves in a new light, and that's going to help us make changes to our productivity, to our efficiency. Like if you're someone who follows me because of time management and, productivity stuff, you need to know what your motivations are so that you understand why you do what you do, so you can make the right changes and use the right bait and the right accountability and all that sort of stuff to help you follow through more with what you want to execute on. Ultimately, when you do the inner work to understand yourself, your relationship with the outside world changes as well. And I think I've said this like multiple different times already, but it's a fact that I just want to make sure that we're really clear on and everyone understands. You work on yourself, you understand yourself, and the outside world what you see, what your results are in the world are going to change. And this is why I think doing this work and going through this class is so important. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the first section of the class, the first personality test, which is the Enneagram. So I want to give you guys first the history of the Enneagram, because I feel like it's like shrouded in mystery. It's not really. I just feel like there's a lot of wrong information out there about the Enneagram, unfortunately. So I want to clear some things up about what the Enneagram is. Enneagram itself is a Greek word that means 9-sided symbol. And you can see on the right, that is the symbol of the Enneagram with all of the 9 types put in place, okay? So, but the Enneagram test, right, different than just the word, is a personality assessment where the types are arranged in the form of this symbol because of the interplay between the flow of each type. So actually, this is like one of those things where like a symbol from antiquity is being used just to illustrate, trying to map out the interplay between and the relationship between all of these types. And it's actually done very beautifully. It's like genius, actually. The test as we know it, the Enneagram test, not the word Enneagram, not the symbol, was developed by a Bolivian native, Oscar Achazo, in the 1970s. Okay, so that's really when the test came to be. Now, the philosophy behind the Enneagram contains components from mystical Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Taoism, Buddhism, and ancient Greek philosophy, particularly Socrates, Plato, and the Neoplatonists. All traditions that stretch back into antiquity, and that information comes, it's a direct quote from the Enneagram Institute website, which I have linked down below. So a lot of times you hear the Enneagram, they're talking about this like an ancient test. No, it's not an ancient test, okay? The test itself is modern. The philosophy of, really, this is the psychology of the philosophy, yes, dates back ages and ages and ages, right? As soon as humans became self-aware of themselves and started studying themselves and seeing the patterns between humans and the way we interact and the way we interact with the world. Yes, all of these different traditions, right, which, have been seeking to understand the world and the truth of the world have roots in this information, right? This information is rooted, I should say, rather, in those traditions. But the Enneagram test is not particularly one religion or another. And the information itself is not like, it's not the test itself that has been done years and years and years ago. It's just information is being pulled in from ancient sources to understand things. And if you guys saw my Tubecast or listened to my Tubecast series, you guys know that something that I was kind of sharing with you guys in those tips in the Tubecast were all about the fact that I truly believe that truth, knowledge, is found in all different places. You can really find it anywhere. So that's why I think, there's a lot of beauty in the Enneagram, that it really does draw on ultimate truths that have been solidified throughout the ages. Okay? I could go on and on. Now, the Enneagram test consists of 9 personality types associated with numbers 1 through 9 and a general descriptor of what the type is. So you can see the general descriptor of what the type is by number. I think it's important to know too that there's no like hierarchy with these numbers. There's an interplay between numbers and different relationships between numbers that we're going to get into, but there's not like one type that's better than any other. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and that's kind of why the Enneagram is like a 9-sided symbol within a circle. You know what I mean? Because everyone's equal. So I just want to keep that in mind. So each type is defined by a set of core fears and desires that originated in youth, tied to a psychological wound. So that's kind of like the basis of the Enneagram, is this idea that every type has a fear and it has a desire. And that fear was a wound that happened psychologically, usually in youth, that we live with for the rest of our lives, basically. Now, because of this, our personality is developed in a way so that we began to protect ourselves from this wound by striving for some element that we believed was missing or lacking in ourselves. Okay, so that is what this idea of the Enneagram is. Something happened to you in youth that kind of formed a wound, that you developed a personality around this wound to protect yourself, and you strived for certain things, and that's why your personality developed into one of these types. Now, as humans, we each face most of the struggles that are defined by each type, but there's likely one that is the strongest desire of all. So this is one of those things that makes the Enneagram hard, and why it was personally hard for me was because all of the elements of all of the types you are going to experience in your life, right? It's just about finding the one that's the strongest and deepest desire. Again, this is not a perfect test, but it brings us great insight into the understanding of our motivations in this way, okay? Let's start with a brief test, right? I'm going to give you guys a test so we can figure out our Enneagram numbers. Now, if you guys already know or you think you know what your Enneagram number is, let's hold off on that for now. Let's do a little quick test and we'll see what you get, right? So I want you guys to get out a piece of paper and a pen, and I want you to write out 3 lines of the numbers 1 through 9, okay? So we're going to do this as an activity. You have a paper, you guys have a piece of paper in front of you that's written out like this, okay? You're going to write out 1 through 9 in 3 rows, just like that, okay? Now, I'm going to guide you through 3 activities to help you identify your number. As I read the descriptions for these, I want you to underline any answers that resonate with you, okay? So you're going to underline any numbers, right, that are associated. So I'm going to ask you 3 activities, 3 questions basically, and each of those is one of the lines in this on your paper. And as I read this descriptions to you, I want you to think about the answers, and if it resonates, like, oh yeah, that sounds like me, I want you to underline it and underline the number that it relates to. But I want you to circle the number or numbers that feel right on target. Like, oh, maybe this one's the most of all. Again, Enneagram, everything is going to apply to us in one way or another, or most things will, but there's always 1, maybe 2 that are the strongest. So I want you to kind of use that framework as you are going through this testing, right? Okay. Activity 1 is core fears and desires. So in this first activity, I'm going to read off the core fears and desires of each number. Again, using that first line of numbers on your paper, I want you to underline any numbers whose descriptions resonate. Like you're like, oh yeah, that sounds like it could be me. But circle the one that feels like right on target, okay? This is type number 1. So you're going to circle type number 1 if this sounds like you. Type number 1 is the perfectionist, is a principled, purposeful, self-controlled, and perfectionistic. The core fear of the 1 is being wrong, bad, evil, inappropriate, unredeemable, or corruptible. And the core desire of the 1 is to have integrity, to be good, balanced, accurate, virtuous, and right. If you're someone who always has to be right, if you're someone who's very strongly perfectionistic, has any aversion to breaking the law, breaking rules, like you are a rule follower, right? Circle or underline 1, depending on how strong that resonates with you, okay? That is type number 1. Type number 2 is the helper. The helper is generous, demonstrative, people-pleasing, and possessive. Their core fear is being rejected and unwanted, being thought worthless, needy, inconsequential, dispensable, or unworthy of love. Their core desire is to be appreciated, loved, and wanted. The helper is someone who will go out of their way to help anyone. You maybe not anyone, but people that you love and care about, you will go out of your way to help them. If someone asks you for something, you are there. You love to give. You love to be generous. Sometimes you give and you're more generous than you should be. And this comes from this idea that you don't want to be rejected. You want people to love you. You want to be worthy. And that's the way that you show your love, by helping others, being generous, etc., etc. Okay? So circle or underline number 2 if that's you, right? You don't have to underline every one of them, by the way. If it doesn't resonate with you, don't even worry about it. But circle it if it strongly sounds like you. Underline if you're like maybe, if it's a maybe. Type number 3 is the performer. The performer is adaptable, excelling, driven, and image conscious. Their core fear is being exposed as or thought incompetent, insufficient, or worthless, or failing to be or appear successful. Their core desire is having high status and respect, being admired, successful, and valuable. The performer is like the networker who wants to be all things to all people, right? They like to be in a position of status. They want to be in a position of power because their value comes from this, they feel like their value comes from being seen, right? They need to be seen as valuable because they think if they don't not seen as valuable, then they're worthless, okay? If you feel like that's you, circle or underline appropriately. Type 4 is the romantic. The romantic is expressive, dramatic, self-absorbed, and temperamental. Their core fear is being inadequate, emotionally cut off, plain, mundane, defective, flawed, or insignificant. Their core desire is to be unique, special, and authentic. The 4 is someone who I like to think of them as the special snowflake, the person who always has to be different, the person who I find them to be a little bit more exaggerating, right? You like to exaggerate, you like to tell stories, anything that makes you feel like you are special, like you have an identity that you have to be, it reminds me of the Coco Chanel quote, in order to be irreplaceable, one must always be different, right? That is the embodiment of the four, okay? So if that sounds like you, circle or underline that. And again, I just want to say to you, as I'm saying this, I might be saying things that you may feel like might be offensive, right? Again, that would be resistance. There is no judgment in this, right? This is just traits of a personality, and we're trying to use it to identify you. So don't let anything that I say scare you away from the number. I want you to actually find your real number if we can possibly do this in today's class, okay? Type 5 is the investigator. They're perceptive, innovative, secretive, and isolated. Their core fear is being annihilated, evaded, or not existing, being thought incapable or ignorant, having obligations placed upon you or your energy depleted, okay? Their core desire is being capable and competent. So type 5 is a person who's like, I can take care of myself. Usually they're very private, more introverted types of people. They, keep things close to their chest. They like to evaluate. They like to investigate, get lots of information before they make a choice. Does this sound like you? Type number 5. Underline or circle appropriately. Type 6, the loyalist, is engaging, responsible, anxious, and suspicious. Their core fear is feeling fear itself, being without support, security, or guidance, being blamed, targeted, or alone, or physically abandoned. Their core desire is having security, guidance, and support. So these are people who are very loyal to other people because they feel like they can't make it without other people, right? So they're very much people who bring people together, and they will stick to people, right? They often are like worst case scenario type of planners. So if you're the kind of person you're like, no, what are we going to do if this happens? What are we going to do if that happens, right? Like you play kind of like the supporting actor role maybe in your life, if that makes sense, in a way, because you are worried about making sure that you've got support, that you're secure, you're guided, that you're not alone, right? They really are afraid of being alone. So they are loyal to the people in their lives. So that's type 6. 7 is the enthusiast. They are spontaneous, versatile, acquisitive, and scattered. Their core fear is being deprived, trapped in emotional pain, limited, or bored, missing out on something fun. Their core desire is to be happy and fully satisfied and content, right? So if you, a lot of times like the enthusiast, I have a friend who's an enthusiast, who's a number 7, who I never see this person not happy. This person is always jumping from one thing to another, loves to travel, go out there, experience life, right? I'm telling you, I've never seen this person sad, or basically never seen this person in a state where they were not openly happy. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not openly happy when they're by themselves, but they're all about life and enjoying life in all the different ways. They really just want to enjoy life and feel all of the benefits of life. They don't want to ever be in pain. They avoid pain. They avoid doing things that are hard as much as possible. That's type 7. Type 8 is the challenger. The challenger is self-confident, decisive, and willful and confrontational. Their core fear is being weak, powerless, harmed, controlled, vulnerable, manipulated, and left at the mercy of injustice. Their core desire is to protect themselves and to those in their inner circle. So the challenger is someone who really is the person who's not afraid of confrontation, the person who will say what they think at the dinner table and make that politically incorrect comment or insensitive comment just to stir the pot, and they will defend themselves. If you hurt someone close to the 8, they're going to go after you, okay? They are very strong-willed, very confident, decisive. They don't want anyone to be able to control them. They want ultimate freedom and ultimate control of their lives. That is the 8. And finally, the 9 is the peacemaker. They're receptive, reassuring, complacent, and resigned. Their core fear is being in conflict, tension, or discord, feeling shut out and overlooked, losing connection with others. Their core desire is having inner stability and peace of mind. So 9s end up being very people-oriented. They love having people around them. They love everyone being in peace and unity. The peacemaker, that says it all, right? Like a lot of these descriptors are very dead on. They will often put other people's needs in front of their own just to keep peace, right? And because of that, sometimes they don't seem very driven. Sometimes they seem, like they say, complacent and resigned, right? So that is the 9. They want everyone to be happy. They want to feel other people's emotions. They really want inner stability and they want peace of mind all around them. Okay? That's the 9. And I just want to say before I move on that because this is a very long class, I want to move through this. I'm going to be testing you guys for 3 different personality tests. So you guys can imagine, hopefully having the words on screen, it makes it easier for you guys to follow along. Now, activity number 2 is the stances. Okay. In this second activity, I'm going to read you the descriptions of the 3 possible stances. So there's 9 total types, 3 stances, which means there's 3 numbers that belong to each stance. So in this one, you're going to use the second line of numbers on your paper, and you're going to underline the 3 numbers whose stance resonates, but circle the one that feels most right. So I will say this, no matter how many things you underlined or circled in the top line, if you could keep this to one stance, okay, that's going to make your process much simpler to figure out what your ultimate number is, okay? So I'm going to read you a description, and there's going to be 3 numbers associated with them. So stance number 1 is the future-focused stance. Does this sound like you? You're high energy and focused on improving things. You are a planner. You're always looking ahead. You are often the leader in situations, and if you're not the leader necessarily, you may frequently find that you're often steps ahead of those who are around you and waiting for others to catch up because you're always looking at the future. You are future-focused. Does that sound like you? If it sounds like you, dead on, circle it. I would really recommend only circling one of these stances. If this sounds like you, you're going to choose number 3, 7, and 8. Those are the ones you're going to circle, 3, 7, and 8. Okay? If you're future focused. Stance 2 is you're in the moment, focused on now. Does this sound like you? You live in the moment. You rely on the people around you for feedback. You're always checking in to see how you're doing and where you are in relation to others. You want to do a good job right now on the projects that you're focused on. You aren't worried much about the past or what will happen in the future. You're very in the now. Okay, what needs to be done now? What do I have to do next? How can I help people right now? How am I doing at this? Am I meeting your needs? Is that the kind of person that you are? Is that your stance? You're focused on the now. What can I do right now? What work needs to be done right now? If that sounds like you, you're going to choose numbers 1, 2, and 6. Okay, 1, 2, and 6 if you are focused on the now. Activity 2, stance number 3, past focused, okay? So does this sound like you? Are you a daydreamer? Do you like to think and remember, observe, and ponder? You don't feel particularly action-oriented or relationship-oriented. You prefer to reflect and reminisce, okay? So we have 3 stances. We have the future, the now, and the past. And I hope you can kind of get a sense for what the differences are between those. So if you are someone who is past focused, you are maybe not feeling like you're always motivated to get things done, right? Like the future focused person is. You're not worried about relationships and how you can help people right now, which would be the now focus, right? That second stance. You're more of a reflector, reminiscer, and that's the way you might spend a lot of your time. I mean, obviously everyone has to take care of their own needs in the now, right? But, are you more future oriented, more focused on right now what needs to be done, or are you more focused on looking back at the past? If that's you, the past, circle 4, 5, and 9. Okay? Now, activity 3, the center of intelligence. In this third and final activity, I'm going to describe the 3 possible centers of intelligence. In this activity, I want you to consider how you initially react to bad news or in challenging situations. That's what we're looking at here. If you got really bad news or you're in a really challenging situation, what is your first instinct, okay? Using the third line of numbers on your paper, underline the 3 numbers whose center of intelligence description resonates, but circle the one that feels most right. This is just like the stances. There are 3 centers of intelligence that each have 3 numbers related to them. Try only to circle one set of 3, right? All 3 you're going to circle, but try only to focus on 1, 3. Like you only have one stance, you only have one center of intelligence, right? Okay. The center of intelligence 1, this is the heart or feeling center. So when you get bad news or you're in a challenging situation, your first reaction is a shame response. You might feel heartbreak. You wonder if it's your own fault or if you could have done something to change the outcome. Do you blame yourself or try to take accountability for bad things that happen to others, even when they're clearly not your fault, right? So imagine a bad situation happened to you, your worst nightmare. What is your first response in that situation? Okay. If you feel like you have a heart-centered or feeling response where you start feeling shame and heartbreak and you just want to fix things, you want to make things right for people, you take accountability, like this is all my fault. If that's you, if you hear yourself saying that to people a lot, that may be you. And if that is, choose numbers 2, 3, and 4. Okay? 2, 3, and 4. Next center of intelligence is the head or thinking center. So your first reaction when bad news or a challenging situation comes is a fear response. You might be confused. You're trying to figure out why this thing happened so you can try to fix it or prevent it in the future. You like to use your brain to process the event, to logic your way out of it, or to make sense of it, okay? And you know what's really interesting right now with the pandemic going on, you might think about what your reaction was to the pandemic. You know, that might be a good example, right? Because this is something that's a challenging situation for sure. What was your first reaction to it, right? Were you like, oh my goodness, how can I, how could this happen? Like, how could this happen as though you caused a pandemic, right? Like that's what a heart-centered person would think. The head-centered person is like, wait, what is this? I need to do research. What is going on? I don't understand. Like, how could this be happening? Like, let me try to figure this out, right? Let me figure out a plan for like, how do we deal with this? I never want this to happen again, right? If that was your response, then you're a head thinking center of intelligence. So if that sounds like you, you're going to choose numbers 5, 6, and 7, okay? Final center of intelligence is the gut or instinct center. Your first reaction to bad news or a challenging situation is an anger response. You get angry. You act instinctually. You don't stop to think before you act, and you don't feel any personal shame or internalize the situation to blame yourself. You move to action quickly, and you are actually very good in a crisis, okay? So something bad happens. What is it I can do? I'm going to, I'm not happy about this. How am I going to change it? What am I going to do? What action am I going to take? Right? Think about that. That's when you have that gut feeling like, oh, something bad happened. You're like, oh, I'm immediately angry, right? So someone gives you bad news and you're like, what? You're kind of get mad about it, right? If that's you, you might be gut or instinct centered, okay? And if that's you, you're going to choose numbers 8, 9, and 1, okay? Now, I want you to take a look at your paper. Are there any numbers that you circled all 3 times, right? Or perhaps there's more than one. That's normal, and that we might be able to work that out, what your number is, with the next set of information that we're going to go through. But hopefully you had one number that was circled 3 times. Like, oh yeah, this really resonates across all 3, right? Let me know, you guys, if you feel like you had that. I'd love to hear what you guys think your numbers are, and what that was all, what your number is. I'm just going to check the comments real quickly, make sure we're all doing good still. Just resetting this to make sure that I'm up to date on comments. Yeah, cool. Okay. So feel free to let me know what your type is, if you saw one, or if you really just see a pattern with them, you may be able to choose what your number is. But there's more information in Enneagram. Enneagram's complicated. We're going to keep going. So I happen to be an 8. Okay. So I'm going to use myself as an example to help you better understand the rest of the type information as we go through it. So if you hear me reference myself, that's why, just so I can teach you guys things. So the next set of information you want to know about the Enneagram is stress and growth numbers. So each number moves in a direction of integration, which is a direction of growth, and a direction of disintegration, stress. So this is where the idea of the Enneagram having like these 9 sides and all of the numbers hit other numbers as well. This is where that symbol comes into play with the way that the relationship between the numbers, okay? So this means that although you are one type, right? You are with one dominant type, you might act like another type during a good period, and you might act like another type during a bad period. Because of this, if you had more than one number circled, or like a lot of you like, oh, I'm seeing these numbers a lot, right? It's possible that the additional numbers are actually on the spectrum for your main type, okay? So let's go ahead and go through the types. The direction of integration or growth. This is how the numbers work out, okay? And there's 2 sets of this actually, because there's 2 kind of like directionals with this. So if you were a 1, if you're a 1, you move to a 7 in a good time in growth. If you're a 7, you move to a 5. If you're a 5, you move to an 8. If you're an 8, you move to a 2. If you're a 2, you move to a 4. If you're a 4, you go to 1. Okay, so in good times, that's the direction that things may go. So you may actually notice, like, let's say you circled 8 and 8 and 2. Okay, that may be because that may be the spectrum that you're on, the 8 and 2 for growth, right? So that may actually be a reason, because when you're doing good as an 8, you go to 2, right? So look and kind of see if you circled more than one number, if that kind of fits. Now, also, there's a second set. There's like a triad within the Enneagram, which is 9, 3, and 6. So a 9 goes to a 3 goes to a 6, and a 6 goes back to a 9 in growth, okay? So if you had 9 and 3 circled, maybe you're a 9 that goes to a 3, right? Or it could be you can be the number of disintegration, maybe you're 3 that goes to a 9. We'll talk about that in a second. But look and see if you can find those patterns, right? Because all the numbers move to another number, and they kind of mimic them in a way when things are going really good, okay? Then there's a direction of disintegration, which is the direction of stress, right? And this is the way that works. 1 moves to 4 in stress, 4 moves to 2, 2 moves to 8, 8 moves to 5, 5 moves to 7, 7 moves to 1, okay? And then 9 moves to 6, 6 moves to 3, 3 moves to 9, okay? So this is just another way to look at and evaluate those numbers, because you might be able to pick out what your pattern is if you maybe circled more than one thing, okay? Because that might actually resonate with you, okay? And this is, again, disintegration is stress. So like when times are bad, when you're feeling out of control, a 1 mimics a 4, right? A 1 will start acting more like a 4, okay? Now, here's an example. Because I'm an 8, I take on the traits of a 2, which is the helper in growth, and I take on the traits of a 5, an investigator in stress, okay? That's the way it works. So if I were doing this test, it's actually, this happens to me a lot. Like I will end up circling 2 a lot if I do this. Might be between like 8 and 2 sometimes. So because it's like when I am normal, or when I am like when I'm really on, right? So that can sometimes happen for me when I go through this. Now, another factor to consider is wing numbers. I'm gonna take a sip real quick. Okay, wing numbers. This is another thing that goes into the Enneagram. Each number touches 2 numbers on either side of it. They're known as the wings. Think of a bird, right? And they've got 2 wings, right? No personality, as we know, is purely one type. The numbers to the left or right of your main number are also factors that you may lean on. So as an 8, my wings are 7 and 9, because you do this in sequential order. And usually people have one wing that they rely on more. So I consider myself as an 8. I do see myself as a 7, and I can see myself in 9. But I feel like in a day-to-day basis, I think I probably rely more on 9, right? So I feel like maybe more like a peacemaker than I do an enthusiast on like a day-to-day basis, with my number 8 challenger as my main, okay? Again, if you had multiple numbers circled, right? If you had them like next to each other circled, you might see a pattern emerging when you put these details into perspective, right? So like if you had 2, 3, and 4, right? It's possible that you could be a 3, and you rely on 2 and 4 because they're your wings. Do you see that as well? So I hope that makes sense. Now, I've created a little column pattern for you here, so you can check these columns for patterns, right? So the first line is all the type numbers, right? 1 through 9. The second line is the growth number for your type. The third is your stress number, the wing 1 and wing 2 for each of the numbers, right? So going through number 1 goes to a 7 in growth, it goes to a 4 in stress, and the wings of a 1 are 9 and 2. So if you can see any pattern perhaps in what you circled in these, I'll leave this up for a second and I'll take a little sip of water. This is just to help you if you haven't landed on a type. Sometimes you're able to figure out your number that way. Let's see. Okay, so it looks like, let me see, I'm just going to go through and see if I can help you guys. Okay, so Kaylee said, I did not get one number circled on all 3, not unusual. I thought I would be a 3, but the last set I circled 1, 7, and 8. Okay. So 3, I'm just going to say, if you thought you were a 3, Kaylee, let's take a look at what touches 3. Or really, maybe let's look at 3 first. So does 3 touch 1, 7, and 8? It does not. But let's look at 1. Does 1 touch anything? No. 8. 8 touches 7. And oh, something I will say. Okay, I don't know all of these for every number. Remember earlier I said that my Enneagram, I was mistyped for a while. I was typed as a 3 because 3 happens to be a look-alike number for an 8. 3s and 8s apparently look very similar. So if you think you're a 3, you could be an 8, or if you think you're an 8, you could be a 3. So if you think you're a 3, Kaylee, and you've touched 8, you might actually just be an 8. 8 touches 7. Okay? Edie says I have 2 7s. Okay. What was the thing that if you only have 2 of the same number circled, look into what that third row was about. If row 1 was all about the core desires and fears, row 2, which I will say those are probably the hardest to actually individually distinguish. Row 2 was all about the stances. So if you were future, now, or past oriented. And the third line was your center of intelligence, which was heart, feeling, head, thinking, gut, instinctual. Okay? Okay. So some of you think you found a number, which is good. Naomi says she's definitely a 5. So let's keep going because I'm going to read you guys the description. Sam said that she didn't. A lot of people, it looks like, got 2, and that's not unusual. Like, got only circled 2 of things. And did you guys find that perhaps it was the core desires and fears that you didn't get right, or do you feel like it was your, like, what do you think is the one? What is the one area that was off? The core desires, the stances, or the centers of intelligence? Because we could probably go over those. So Anna's saying she's thinking 3 with that pattern. Okay. So Kaylee said I circled 1, 8, and 9, which is, okay, so that is 1, 8, and 9 technically touch each other, right? So you could be a 9 with your wings would be 8 and 1. Okay, so think about that. Okay, so yeah, okay, good. So Janny says the stance is the one that they had the hardest time with. Yep, okay. So I would love to hear what you guys think was the hardest to deal with, and maybe we can come back to that. Jamila says 8 except for fears. Okay. So hopefully some of you did this and were able to get your type, or maybe you're between 2 different types. The final piece of the Enneagram are the instincts, but you can't really move on to instincts until you have your type, because all of the instincts are different for types, but we're still going to talk about this, okay? So the 3 instincts, each number has one of 3 possible instincts, okay? Some people call them subtypes, but the Enneagram website is like, no, they're not subtypes, they're instincts, right? So it's the way you act instinctually. One is called the self-preservation instinct, one is the sexual or attraction instinct, and one is the social or adaptive instinct. So actually, I'm literally just going to read these instincts off for you. They come from the Enneagram Institute. These are just descriptions I'm going to read off. So the self-preservation instinct. People who have this as their dominant instinct are preoccupied with the safety, comfort, health, energy, and well-being of the physical body. In a word, they are concerned with having enough resources to meet life's demands. Identification with the body is a fundamental focus for all humans, and we need our body to function well in order to be alive and active in the world. Most people in contemporary cultures have not faced life or death survival in the strictest sense. Thus, self-preservation types tend to be concerned with food, money, housing, medical matters, and physical comfort. Moreover, those primarily focused on self-preservation by extension are usually interested in maintaining these resources for others as well. Their focus of attention naturally goes towards things related to these areas, such as clothes, temperature, shopping, decorating, and the like, particularly if they're not satisfied in these areas or have a feeling of deficiency due to their childhoods. Self-preservation types tend to be more grounded, practical, serious, and introverted than the other 2 instinctual types. They might have active social lives and a satisfying intimate relationship, but if they feel that their self-preservation needs are not being met, they still tend to not be happy or at ease. In their primary relationships, these people are nesters. They seek domestic tranquility and security with a reliable, stable partner. Okay, so that's the self-preservation instinct. And I'm literally just giving you guys this information because after this class, if you want to dig deeper, it's good to like kind of know these things so you can kind of find directly what your type is. Instinct number 2 is the sexual or attraction instinct. Many people originally identified themselves as this type because they have learned that the sexual types are interested in one-to-one relationships. But all 3 instinctual types are interested in one-to-one relationships for different reasons, so this does not distinguish them. The key element in sexual types is an intense drive for stimulation and a constant awareness of the chemistry between themselves and others. Sexual types are immediately aware of the attraction or lack thereof between themselves and other people. Further, while the basis of this instinct is related to sexuality, it is not necessarily about engaging in the sexual act. There are many people that we are excited to be around for reasons of personal chemistry that we have no intention of getting involved with. Nonetheless, we might be aware that we feel stimulated in certain people's companies and less so in others. The sexual type is constantly moving towards that sense of intense stimulation and juicy energy in their relationships and in their activities. They are the most energized of the three instinctual types and tend to be more aggressive, competitive, charged, and emotionally intense than the self-preservation or social types. Sexual types have an intense energetic charge in their primary relationships, or else they remain unsatisfied. They enjoy being intensely involved, even merged with others, and can become disenchanted with partners who are unable to meet their needs for intense energetic union. Losing yourself in a fusion of being is the ideal here, and sexual types are always looking for this state with others and with stimulating objects in their world. That is the sexual type. Okay. Then 3 is social or adaptive. Just as many people tend to misidentify themselves as sexual types because they want one-on-one relationships, many people fail to recognize themselves as social types because they get the false idea that this means always being involved in groups, meetings, and parties. If self-preservation types are interested in adjusting the environment to make themselves more secure and comfortable, social types adapt themselves to serve the needs of the social situations they find themselves in. Thus, social types are highly aware of other people, whether they are in intimate relationships or in groups. They are also aware of how their actions and attitudes are affecting those around them. Moreover, sexual types seek intimacy. Social types seek personal connection. They want to stay in long-term contact with people and to be involved in their world. Social types are the most concerned with doing things that will have some impact on their community or even broader domains. They tend to be warmer, more open, engaging, and socially responsible than the other two types. In their primary relationships, they seek partners with whom they can share social activities, wanting their intimates to get involved in projects and events with them. Paradoxically, they actually tend to avoid long periods of exclusive intimacy and quiet solitude, seeing both as potentially limiting. Social types lose their sense of identity and meaning when they are not involved with others in activities that transcend their individual interests. That is the social instinct. So much reading. I'm a sexual 8. Okay, I just love saying that. Based on this information, what type do you think you are? Let me know. Leave me a comment. Let's talk about it. So, someone had said Anna said the self-preservation instinct is coming at her today. Cool. Okay. So, maybe you know your subtype too. Well, not subtype, instinct. Sorry. Sorry, I'm getting a little coffee. Hold on. Just gotta clear my throat. So much talking. Okay. So next, let's talk about using this information. The purpose of understanding our type is to learn and grow from it. For each type, there is a core weakness that should be addressed and considered. And I'll provide my feedback for what each type may consider working on as well. Okay? So, type 1's weakness is resentment. 1s are fixated on perfection. They need everyone and everything buttoned up, doing things the right way. Because no one meets their astronomically high standards, 1s fill with anger that boils over in the form of resentment. 1 should focus on grace for themselves and others. No one is perfect, not even you, 1. Have a healthy outlet for anger so it doesn't get you in trouble. Try journaling. So that is my feedback for the 1s, okay? For 2's weakness is pride. 2s are keenly aware of everyone's needs, which is noble, except they ignore their own needs. While they're natural givers, 2s struggle mightily to receive. Their pride comes in believing they're indispensable, more false humility than boastfulness. So 2s should practice what they preach more. Ask for help, accept help from others, and turn their nurturing energy in on themselves. Self-care is essential for a 2. Okay? Type 3's weakness is deceit. Threes are image conscious. They have an uncanny ability to appear successful, knowledgeable, and important, regardless of the crowd. They deceive others, yes, but ultimately, threes deceive themselves by allowing their ego or persona to become their identity. Threes should do the spiritual work of letting go of their ego identity. You should try some books by Eckhart Tolle. That's my recommendation for a three. Types of 4 weakness is envy. Fours are always missing something, always. Everyone else seems so freaking happy and content. They're fixated on being special, different, authentic, and they're often driven by their emotions, which are many and often. Fours should focus on self-confidence issues. They project uniqueness because they don't believe that they are actually unique, but each and every person is in their own way. Avoid comparison traps and watch what you consume on social media if you are a 4, okay? Types 5 weakness is avarice. Avarice seems archaic. Now, by the way, these are literally lines I think that are coming from the book, The Road Back to You. So that's linked in the description. So I didn't necessarily write these, I just copy pasted. Avarice seems archaic. Why not use greed? Because it's the wrong word. Greed is a thirst for more material possessions and money. Fives aren't as much concerned with acquiring more as they are with hoarding what they have. They're fixated on being independent and seeing a world of lack. They often withhold love and affection from those closest to them. So fives need to open themselves up and become more generous to others with their knowledge, time, and with themselves. Practicing gratitude is a great way for a 5 to open up and see that there is more than enough for to go around. Okay, that's for 5. Type 6 weakness is fear. The world is a scary, dangerous place, so says a 6. 6s are doomsday and worst case scenario specialists. They're always looking for some authority or leader to make them feel secure. For a 6, the shit is always about to hit the fan. 6s should focus on relaxation. Self-care, yes, but more importantly, meditation. Having a go-to practice to manage their anxiety will help them control and overcome it. So if you feel like you're like excessively anxiety and worried about things all the time going wrong, you might be a 6, okay? Type 7 is weakness is gluttony. So don't think food, think excess. 7s do everything too much in an attempt to avoid the present. In particularly, they avoid anything hard or painful. 7s are fixated on immediate gratification, making them especially vulnerable to addiction. So 7s should take some time to slow down. Meditation, self-care, yes and yes. Focusing on the present and borrowing some confidence from their neighbor, the 8, to address issues and conflicts ASAP instead of avoiding it absolutely. So if you find that you're someone who likes to avoid conflict and not just like you're trying to mediate conflict, you're just like, oh, I'm avoiding this. Like you always find yourself looking in the future because you don't want to deal with the now, like very much an escapist, that is the 7. Type 8's weakness is lust. 8s aren't lustful in a sexual way. They lust after intensity. 8s are confident, confrontational, and domineering. Their motto is act now, ask for forgiveness, never. If they had a logo, it would be an exclamation mark. 8s avoid vulnerability and their greatest fear is being controlled. I think that's so funny, that statement he made of if they had a logo, it would be an exclamation mark because that I overly use exclamation points as an 8. Okay. 8s need to channel their inner strength to themselves instead of others and open themselves up. It's okay to rely on other people without controlling them, 8. In order to develop loyalty, you need to remember to trust people first. Also, detach yourself from other people's outcomes and lives. We all have our own paths in life, right? So as an 8, I can totally resonate with the idea of lusting after life, like intensity and feeling the need for loyalty around you, but also like protective nature. I get way too involved in other people's lives sometimes. And in terms of not in terms of the 2 instinct, which would be like I get too involved with helping, I get too involved with telling people what they should do. Okay, so that's an 8. Type's 9 weakness is sloth. 9s aren't physically lazy. Sloth refers to spiritual apathy. 9s avoid conflict at all cost. Everyone always seems too serious, too demanding, too angry, too clingy. The world would be a much better place if everyone had a glass of wine and a chill pill. Lacking focus and drive, 9s can go the entirety of their lives without a true identity or purpose. So nines need to develop routines that energize them and find causes that light them up enough to give a darn, right? It's great to set intentions for peace, but not at the expense of your own needs and your own identity. So set small goals, develop the habits to support them, and work on utilizing your voice of reason for yourself as well as others, right? So the thing about nines is they can seem like unmotivated in life, like they're basically sit back, relax, chill. They're good at like, they love to talk things out and be close to people, right? But they're not necessarily like internally motivated to get things done for themselves, right? They would rather be at peace than have anything that could potentially disturb it, okay? And I realize that so many of these descriptions, things just overlap between all of the numbers, and that's intentional, right? We all have all of the elements of these personalities in our own personality. It's just like to what extent, like what's the most significant, right? So that was the Enneagram. There is much deeper insight to gain from your type, so please do additional research on your own. I left the resources in the description box for you to get started. Now I just want to check. Okay, an hour in. Okay, we're doing good. We're doing good. Okay, so I knew the Enneagram was going to be the biggest one. I had the most slides. It was like half the deck. So we're doing good. Okay, so people are guessing what they are. Social 2s, self-preservation 3. Sam thinks they may be a sexual 5. Sam, I will say, knowing that you are a marine biologist, 5s do end up very often being drawn to like the sciences. So that's very true. Yeah, so hopefully after hearing the weaknesses, 5 sounds like more like you than a 2. Okay. Did 5 go to 2 at all? I'm going to try to go back. Wait. Let me see. I want to go back to the lines here. Did 5 go to 2? 5 doesn't go to 2. Did 5 and 2 anywhere together? I'm trying to see if 5 and 2 are anywhere in these lines together. 8. 8 goes to 2 in growth and 5 in stress. Sam. So it's possible as well that you could be an 8, right? So this is like, if you guys want to take a screenshot of this to just kind of keep working this out, you want to find, it would probably, it's very possible that if you circled multiple numbers and you're down to a couple of numbers, that they might make sense in the context of these columns. Okay, so we're going to move on though to the next personality test, which is the Myers-Briggs. There you are, Myers-Briggs. Okay, so now Myers-Briggs. I bet a lot of you know what your Myers-Briggs is, okay? So that seems to be the one that everyone knows. I feel like when I worked at a company, we always did Myers-Briggs. It was always brought up, blah, blah, blah. What I'll say about Myers-Briggs, though, is that my Myers-Briggs number changed, okay? This is the thing that happens to me. When I take the test, I can get one of 2 answers. There's one element that I really waffle between, and some of the tests that you can take for the Myers-Briggs will give you the percentage that you are for each number, for each letter. And so I very often am very close to 50-50. And I've identified with one type of Myers-Briggs for a long time, but now actually like researching, and this was just like in the last year, really researching in depth, and we'll get to this and we'll talk about this when we get to this point, I can see now that actually I might be another type, just one letter off, just another type. So, these things do change. They do evolve based on your area of life, what's going on with you. I would totally see that, like, just like the Enneagram, where you could be one number in stress and one in growth, your Myers-Briggs could change too, you guys. Again, all of these things are inside of us. So let's talk about the history of the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. It's a personality typing system that evaluates the way people perceive the world and make decisions. It's inspired by Carl Jung's book, Psychological Types. Myers-Briggs Type Indicator was developed by Catherine Cook Briggs and her daughter Isabel Briggs Myers from the 1920s until the publication of their first handbook on the subject, which was in 1944. The Myers-Briggs Type Indicator outlines 16 personality types based on 8 cognitive and orientation-based cognitive function. Sorry, I have a typo in there. So 16 personalities, 8 options that are 2 paired against each other, okay? The 16 personalities are formed by comparing 4 pairs of functions. Oh, I know what that is. Extroversion versus introversion, sensing versus intuition, thinking versus feeling, and judging versus perceiving. Okay? So let's work through a quick test. It'll be really quickly because it's only 4 things. Let's get a piece of paper and a pen to write out the following grid. Okay, so create a grid that looks something like this for yourself. You could put a whole line down the center if you wanted to, but you're going to have E versus I, and give yourself some space around to like take notes. S versus N, T versus F, and J versus P. Okay, so as we work through the descriptions of the 8 functions, I want you to circle the letter that applies to you and or track the number of statements that you agree with, right? I'm going to give you a bunch of statements, agree or disagree sort of a thing. Kind of track how many, like maybe just like do a tally of things that, and then maybe hopefully you'll be able to find which one you are. So Myers-Briggs, the first set of functions have to do with your favorite world. So do you prefer to focus on the outer world or do you focus on your own inner world? So let's focus on extroversion, the E, okay? E versus I. Do these statements sound like you? I like getting my energy from activity, involvement in events, and having a lot of different activities. I'm excited when I'm around people and I like to energize other people. I like moving into action and making things happen. I generally feel at home in the world. I often understand a problem better when I can talk it out loud about it and hear what others have to say. So the following statements, do they generally apply to you? I'm seen as an outgoing or as a people person. I feel comfortable in groups and like working in them. I have a wide range of friends and know lots of people. Sometimes I jump too quickly into activity and don't allow enough time to think it over. Before I start a project, I sometimes forget to stop and get clear on what I want to do and why. So that was the first thing, was the description of the introvert, if that sounds like you. And then just a few statements to consider. These come from the Myers-Briggs organization, by the way. And there's 5 statements here, right? So you can say how many out of 5 you think apply to you. Something else that I want to make a point about is that a lot of times people think extroversion is the same thing as outgoing. You can be an outgoing introvert, okay? So that is a little bit different, right? If you're someone, I know that they seem very similar, but it is possible that when you are an introvert, for you to still be able to like perform and do things like that with people, the idea of your favorite world is really where you get your energy, right? Do you get energized by being around people, or do you get energized being by yourself, right? And everybody needs time alone, like self-care and things like that. But are you the kind of person that's like, oh, I just, after like a big group event or something like that, I just feel like I'm on a high? Or after a big group event, you're like, oh my God, I need to sleep for 10 years, right? I'll give you an example. For me, I am an extrovert. After last week's class, I was riding a high for like an hour and a half immediately afterwards, and then I crashed, right? So that's, after doing all that work, preparing for the whole time, week for that class, I was riding high and I felt it immediately for a little while, and then I did a crash, right? Because your energy is energy. It's always going to deplete. So think about things like that. So introverts, here's a description. I like getting my energy from dealing with ideas, pictures, memories, and reactions that are inside my head, my inner world. I often prefer doing things alone or with 1 or 2 people I feel comfortable with. I take time to reflect so that I have a clear idea of what I'll be doing when I decide to act. Ideas are almost solid things for me. Sometimes I like the idea of something better than the real thing. So the following statements, do they apply to you? I'm seen as reflective or reserved. I feel comfortable being alone and I like things I can do on my own. I prefer to know just a few people well. I sometimes spend too much time reflecting and don't move into action quickly enough. I sometimes forget to check with the outside world and see if my ideas really fit the experience. That was it, though. I'm sorry. Wrong one. Sorry. Okay. Something I was thinking about with this introvert extrovert, and I was thinking about including this in today's class, but I didn't just because things got too long, is there's a lot of resources that compare the Enneagram to Myers-Briggs. So if you know your Myers-Briggs and you're having trouble with your Enneagram, you may need to work backwards, okay? And mine works for me, so it might work for you. So here, these statements, like this introversion is very similar to the stance that is past focused, right? So I'm just going to really quickly, the past focused people were 4, 5, and 9. So if you were a 4, 5, or a 9, you might be an introvert. If you are definitely an introvert, you might be a 4, 5, or a 9 in Enneagram. Things to consider. Let me keep myself there because I've got all my notes here. Okay? Just things to consider. Information. So the second set is about how you process information. So, do you prefer to focus on the basic information you take in, or do you prefer to interpret and add meaning to information? So, we're going to talk about sensing. That's the S. Paying attention to physical reality. What I see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. I'm concerned with what is actually present, current, and real. I notice facts and I remember details that are important to me. I like to see the practical use of things and learn best when I see how to use what I'm learning. Experience speaks to me louder than words. Okay? So the following statements generally apply to you if you're a sensor, an S. I remember events as snapshots of what actually happened, right? So exactly what actually happened. I solve problems by working through facts until I understand the problem. I am pragmatic and look to the bottom line. I start with facts and then I form a big picture. I trust experience first and trust words and symbols less. Is that the last one? Sometimes I pay so much attention to facts, either past or present, that I miss new possibilities. This very often, this sensing, if you're a 5, you're probably a sensor. It's just the way that you're so logical about collecting information. That could relate to you. Okay. So think about those. There's 6 statements there. How many out of 6 apply to you? Now, instead of being sensing, you could be intuitive. So this is the description for intuition, which is N. Paying the most attention to impressions or the meanings and patterns of the information that I get. I would rather learn by thinking a problem through than by hands-on experience. I'm interested in new things and what might be possible so that I think more about the future than the past. I like to work with symbols or abstract theories, even if I don't know how I will use them. I remember events more as an impression of what it was like than as actual facts or details of what happens. Again, here we're seeing something that sounds like Enneagram again, right? So being more future oriented. So if you were a future oriented stance, right, which were 3, 7, and 8, that might mean that you are an N, and that works for me. Being an 8, I know that I am an intuition as well. So here are the statements that I want you to evaluate. I remember events by what I read between the lines about their meaning. I solve problems by leaping between different ideas and possibilities. I'm interested in doing things that are new and different. I like to see the big picture, then to find out the facts. I trust impressions, symbols, and metaphors more than what I actually experienced. Sometimes I think so much about new possibilities that I never look at how to make them a reality. Okay, so how many of those statements apply to you? 6 statements. Out of those 6 statements, how many are you? Right, and compare that to the sensing, right, and see, that's how you'll choose between the two. Give you a second more on that. Okay, next. How you make decisions. So when making decisions, do you prefer to first look at logic and consistency or first look at the people and special circumstances? This is where my number has changed. My Myers-Briggs has changed because I realize now that this question here is asking you about what your first initial step is when you're making a decision. And that's where I realize that I take one avenue as the first initial step, but then I ultimately make a decision based on the other thing that we're going to talk about here at the session. So one of them is thinking and the other one is feeling, right? So this is something that you have to be very clear on what your first step is when you're making decisions, not necessarily the outcome that you come to. So when I make a decision, I like to find the basic truth or principle to be applied, regardless of the specific situation involved. I like to analyze pros and cons and then be consistent and logical in deciding. I try to be impersonal, so I won't let my personal wishes or other people's wishes influence me. That makes me think a lot of 1 too, Enneagram 1. The following statements generally apply to me. I enjoy technical and scientific fields where logic is important. I notice inconsistencies. I look for logical explanations or solutions to most everything. I make decisions with my head and want to be fair. I believe telling the truth is more important than being tactful. Sometimes I miss or don't value the people part of a situation. I can be seen as too task-oriented, uncaring, or indifferent. So we've got 7 statements there, I think. So how many out of those apply to you? Right? Like I said, thinking is definitely, to me, feels like a 1 and a 5 in Enneagram. This is how you first approach making a decision, and it may not be how you ultimately make the decision, but it's your first approach to it. Something else that I've thought about a lot is one of the reasons I realized that my Myers-Briggs was changed is that I feel like through life experience, right? You know, especially me being an 8 Enneagram, which can be very confrontational to people, I had many, many experiences throughout my life where being confrontational, being like that strong-willed person backfired on me. So women tend to be very much more adapted in the psychological fields, right? Like we're able to adapt ourselves a lot better in social situations. So, you know, learning from experience that I shouldn't act a certain way, right? I adjusted myself. So this is one of those things where actually my letter here is a T, even though for a long time I thought I was an F, because my approach to making a decision, I start by, okay, tell me everything that happened. I want to know all the information. And then I want to hear what people were feeling about in the situation, right? So if you were like, imagine you were mediating something, right? Sometimes people just think, okay, well, what are the people involved in this situation? What are their interpretations, right? Like what do they need out of this? Because I want to make sure they're prioritized. But for me, as an 8, 8s are very obsessed with making sure they have all the information so they can make a rational decision. They like need people to always tell them the truth. That's because in my head, right, thinking, I have to think through all the logical, I want to think through the problem first, right? And then I will bring in other people's, you know, feelings, right, to ultimately make my decision. I hope that made sense. Okay, so that's thinking. Feeling. I believe I can make the best decisions by weighing what people care about and the points of view of persons involved in a situation. I am concerned with values and what is best for the people involved. I like to do whatever will establish or maintain harmony. In my relationships, I appear caring, warm, and tactful. The following statements generally apply to me. I have a people or communications orientation. I am concerned with harmony and nervous when it's missing. Sounds like a 9. I look for what is important to others and express concern for others. I make decisions with my heart and want to be compassionate. I believe being tactful is more important than telling the cold truth. Sometimes I miss seeing or communicating the hard truth of situations. I am sometimes experienced by others as too idealistic, mushy, or indirect. Is that the last one? So how many of those sound like you? Yeah. Oops, sorry. Oh, I just hit that. So how many of those apply to you? Are you thinking or are you feeling? Finally, is structure. In dealing with the outside world, do you prefer to get things decided or do you prefer to stay open to new information and options? J, judging. I use my decision-making judging preference, whether it's thinking or feeling, in my outer life. To others, I seem to prefer a planned or orderly way of life, like to have things settled and organized, feel more comfortable when decisions are made, and like to bring life under control as much as possible. Since this pair only describes what I prefer in the outer world, I may inside feel flexible and open to new information, which I am. Do not confuse judging with judgmental in its negative sense about people and events. They are not related, okay? So we're talking about interior, how you interact with the outside world, not how you might feel. Like you might feel like a flexible person, right? But still like things to be ordered, settled on, decisions to be made. You don't like things to be open-ended necessarily, right? And this is me. I'm a J. So I may feel like I'm a flexible person, right? But I'm flexible and then I need to make a decision. Like there needs to be a decision. It needs to be settled. Can't have too many open-ended things, right? The following statements generally apply to me. I like to have things decided. I appear to be task-oriented. I like to make lists of things to do. I like to get my work done before playing. That's really big for me. I cannot do anything fun until I'm like, let's do this first. In fact, that's one of my motivators to get things done is like, I'm like, if you get this work done, you can now do this fun thing. I plan work to avoid rushing just before a deadline. And sometimes I focus so much on the goal that I miss new information. Okay. Does that sound like you? Are you a judger? Not in the negative connotation. Just you're like, I like to make a judgment. Think about like a judge, right? A judge has to weigh all the information. It's like, I've decided, right? Decisions must be made. In fact, instead of saying judging, are you a decider? You're like, I'm just going to decide this for us right now. Where are we going for dinner? I don't know. I've just decided this is where we're going to go. Judging. Okay. And this is perceiving. P, I use my perceiving function, whether it's sensing or intuition, in my outer life. To others, I seem to prefer a flexible and spontaneous way of life, and I like to understand and adapt to the world rather than organize it. Others see me staying open to new experiences and information. Since this pair only describes what I prefer in the outer world, inside I may feel very planful or decisive, which I am. Remember, in type language, perceiving means preferring to take in information. It does not mean being perceptive, as in the sense of having quick and accurate perceptions about people and events. Not the same thing, okay? The following statements generally apply to me. I like to stay open to respond to whatever happens. I appear to be loose and casual. I like to keep plans to a minimum. I like to approach work as play or mix work and play. I work in bursts of energy. I am stimulated by an approaching deadline. Sometimes I stay open to new information so long I miss making decisions when they're needed. A lot of times it sounds like a 7, an Enneagram 7 to me. Okay? Okay. Make sure you guys are drinking your beverages. We're going long here. Yep. Okay. Now I want you to take a look at your paper. From the pairs, you should have one dominant letter for each of those combinations, and then combine the dominant letter from each line to create your Myers-Briggs Type Indicator personality type. Okay? I am ENTJ. What type are you? Okay? And I used to think I was ENFJ, but it's how you initially respond to making decisions, not ultimately how you do it. Like I said, there's like life experience can change you, right? If you've been smacked in the face by life enough times because you're a certain personality, you may learn to adapt to that. But what is your first initial instinct for stuff, you know? Someone said here, it looks like I'm changing to be a P. That was different when I was younger. Absolutely. I do think, like I said, and I've had like when I realized that I was probably ENTJ instead of ENFJ, I had this really long conversation with my friend who is like all into these personality tests too. And basically it was like decision we made was you could be anything at any time, right? So like you can adapt, you can change. I could go from ENFJ, ENTJ like in the span of like a week depending on the situation. So it's just about like maybe what you are most often. Again, it's all about dominant things. So let's talk about using this information. Here I'm going to say we've got an ENFP, ENTJ, INF, but it's a tie between J and P. So Kaylee, this is the thing with that, right? The J and the P. You're a J if you absolutely always have to have things settled, right? Like let's think you're going out with a group of friends and they are like, where should we go for dinner, right? Are you annoyed if they're like, oh, let's just go, like, okay, as a J, I get annoyed when people are like, well, let's just go walk around downtown and we'll just find something that looks good, right? That drives me nuts as a J, right? So if you're like, oh yeah, I love that. I love just being, open to the things, right? Because you may feel like you're flexible inside, but how you actually act outside is different, right? I'm never the go with the flow. Like I'm like, can we make a plan? And if something needs to change, we can change it, but the default is this plan, right? That's a really good way to say it too. A lot of times the J is like to be default. Like, can we just have this plan just in case we can't decide something later? We can keep things open, but this is the backup plan, right? If you're a backup planner, that could be you. Okay. So the purpose of understanding our type is to learn and grow from it, right? There are many ways we can learn from the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, but I think a great place to start is to research your type and your opposite type to identify points of difference. That's how I like to use this. The point is not to change ourselves into something different, but to be aware of elements of the spectrum where we aren't normally drawn. I love the descriptions of each type on the 16 Personalities website, and I've left it linked down below for you to do additional research on your type. So I have the Myers-Briggs organization and the 16 Personalities. I just like the way the 16 Personality breaks things down. So that's the website I like to use to talk about these things. But once you know your type, figure out what the opposite type is, and you may want to research that one too. So let's talk about embodying our opposites. Okay, so extroverts. Extroverts get their energy from the outside world, but they often look before they leap into situations. They could benefit from embodying some of the principles of introverts, such as reflection and self-care. Introverts are more comfortable alone than in groups, but that often leaves them isolated and out of touch. They could benefit from embodying some of the principles of extroverts, such as teamwork and general socialization. Okay, so this is the way we can embody our opposites. Sensing information is a very fact-oriented way of looking at the world, but it often overlooks the role of energy and innuendo that play a significant part of the information gathering. Sensors would do well to embody some traits of intuitives by evaluating different possibilities and looking at the big picture as opposed to individual details. Intuitives have a great ability to read energy and information between the lines. However, they would do well to embody their sensing counterparts by not strictly relying on this information and sticking to facts when the situation calls for it. I love this because I'm definitely like a very, very intuitive person. And I'm definitely the person that, like, if someone's talking to me or saying one thing, I'm feeling your energy and I'm like, that's not really what they're saying right now. Right. And there's times where that energy reading is very useful. And there's times where it can just cause unnecessary conflict because, in some situations, what I think of is a lot of times, like, I have this example in my head for like being intuitive, right? If you're like a girl and you're at a party and you're getting like a bad sense, right? Like, I feel like something bad's gonna happen, or like this guy's looking at me, I'm feeling weird, or like this guy's trying to talk to me and it's making me uncomfortable, right? Having that gut feeling and being like, I'm getting out of here, you know what I mean? Is one thing, right? Because maybe you can't trust the person, the situation is maybe too vague, and there's a possibility of things going wrong, right? But sometimes when you're dealing with people, right, maybe like close relationships, a person may be telling you something and you can sense the energy that they really mean something else is what you think, right? Because you're feeling their energy and you're like, I can tell they're conflicted. They're telling me yes, but I know they mean no, right? But sometimes you really do just have to listen to people because sometimes they want one thing and internally they might be conflicted, but that's not your problem. You know what I mean? Sometimes reading energy as an intuitive is useful, and sometimes it can just cause you to doubt what other people are saying. And so it's just, you have to use your, be rational here. These, if you can trust other people, then maybe listen to what they say more often than what you think they're meaning. And if you can't, use your gut instinct. You know what I mean? People sometimes, I think, avoid their gut instincts too often just to be polite. So that can get you into trouble. So that's my take on those two. Thinking is a logical and consistent way to make decisions in a fair and rational manner. However, thinkers could do well by embodying the traits of a feeling personality by considering the needs of real people involved over the I don't know why I said price there, over the just and fair outcome. Must have been a typo. Feeling is a compassionate means to make decisions that focus on people over rules. However, feelers could benefit from embodying some thinking traits and hold people accountable for their actions and to the rules and situations that call for more structure. So, like, this is something that obviously, like, me really feeling closely aligned to both of these. You know, there are times where, you want to look at just like the bare facts. This is the situation. I don't care the way, you feel about this or how you feel about this. This is the situation, and I have to make a judgment on what's fair and rational. And then there's times where it's like, okay, the outcome of this doesn't really matter. It's not like you're breaking the law. You know what I'm saying? So, what can I do to help people have just the best result? Like, be the mediator in a situation by using my feelings and think about the outcomes and how things work for people over rationale. You know what I mean? This makes me think so much about like politics and why like governing people is hard, because you have to do logical things, but then you need logic in order to be consistent, right? But then you also need to think about the way decisions are affecting people on their day-to-day lives, right? Sometimes things can be good in theory, but not really in practice. So it's like a delicate balance that needs to be struck. Judging is a great way to deal with the uncertainty of the outside world, but judgers can grow by borrowing traits from their perceiving counterparts, such as loosening expectations on outcomes and going with the flow more often. Perceiving is an excellent way to manage your energy within the outside world, but perceivers can grow by borrowing the traits from their judging counterparts. Try taking the time to outline a plan and make a solid decision when the situation calls for it, right? So there's always times where like going with the flow makes sense, and there's times where planning makes sense, right? Use your best, judgment here to decide, if a situation can be more go with the flow or if you need to stick to a plan, right? And also knowing that having a plan doesn't mean that it's actually going to happen. Being open, I think the best situation to be in is to have a plan and then be open that like if situations change, I'm willing to change that plan. I'm not just going to like you know, fall on the sword for my plan. You know what I mean? I'm not going down with the ship just because I've committed to it. You know what I mean? There are ways to embody both and to grow from it. Okay, so that was Myers-Briggs. Again, there's much deeper insight to gain from your type, so please do additional research on your own. I left sources in the description box so you can get started. So let's see what you have to say here. It seems like you guys are doing really good chatting. I love it. Jamila says, I love just walking downtown. I love just walking downtown too, but I need to know that there's a restaurant that has a reservation for me or I get panicked, you know? Oh, Anna says, that's such a great way to put it. Like the plan can change, but we can have a default plan. Yeah, that's like the way that I like to approach it. And a lot of you are saying things about like, you know, walking the middle line. And I think, like I said, I think that a lot of times, especially women being so adaptive in social situations and interpersonal relationships, we do know how to walk a middle line. You know what I mean? We do know how to do that. It's a strength of the, you know, the female persona. Okay. We're doing good, you guys. The next one is really quick. The Four Tendencies, okay? So the history of the Four Tendencies. The Four Tendencies is a personality typing system that focuses on how individuals handle expectations. It was introduced by Gretchen Rubin in her book, Better Than Before, and then covered in her follow-up book, The Four Tendencies. It is a simple test with 4 possible outcomes that measures the way we deal with internal and external expectations to create accountability systems for ourselves. So if you're someone who's like struggles with keeping accountable, struggles with getting things done and doing your goals and things like that, knowing your tendency type and how to manage it is going to help you get more results that you're looking for in your life. So let's work through a quick test. So get a piece of paper and a pen to write out the following grid, okay? So I want you to create like a big X, and on the top of the columns, write meets and resists, okay, on each of the columns. And then on the rows, outer expectations, inner expectations, right? There's only 4 options here. This is all about how you meet or resist inner and outer expectations, okay? Very simple. Outer expectations. So do you meet outer expectations? So do you feel a sense of pressure to complete work when a boss, coworker, or family member assigns it to you? Okay? Does having an accountability buddy keep you focused on your goal? Do you enjoy tracking your progress to see how much you have left to do? Does it give you more confidence when you can see the results of your effort with frequent check-ins? If you said yes to those, or lots of those, then you may meet outer expectations. So you could probably put a check in that box. Outer expectation meets, okay? Do you resist outer expectations? Do you ignore directions or requests that you receive? Do you have to know the reason why you're being asked to do things? Do you find yourself compelled to do the opposite of what people tell you should be done? Is doing things your own way in your own time important to you? If those resonated with you, or you feel like most of them are you, then outer expectations might be resists, okay? It can only be one of the two. You can only meet, you will either meet or you will resist outer expectations. See where I am in here? Here we go. Next, inner expectations. Do you meet inner expectations? Inner expectations meaning your own. Do you complete goals and expectations you set for yourself often, even without accountability? So you're someone who can set a goal and hit it for themselves. You don't need accountability. When you say you are going to do something and it's decided, there's no other option for you than completing. You have to follow through. Do you get the feeling that you just have to follow through the things? There we go, following out there. Do you have a sense of trust with yourself that you know you are capable of taking on obstacles? You're like, I can handle the things. I'm good. I follow through. Generally comfortable with yourself, general feeling of being capable, okay? If so, you may meet inner expectations, in which case inner expectations meets. That's what we're going to check off there. Do you resist inner expectations? Are you more likely to do something if it's new and exciting than if it's something that's you've done a million times before? Do you resist or question all authority, even when it comes to your own authority, right? So you're like, not only do I not listen to other people, I don't think it makes sense for me to even set parameters on myself. Do you cling to the value of personal freedom and independence above all else? You're like, I always just want to have a choice. I always want to be free. I always want to be independent. That's the most important. I can't be, no one has power over me, not even myself, etc. Do you feel a strong need to always have options and not be confined to one specific choice? Okay. If many of these sound like you, then you may, under inner expectations, you may be resisting them. Okay. Very simple. These are only four options here, and 2 and 2. Okay. Now take a look at your paper, and from the grid, you should have one tendency for outer expectations and one for inner to combine together. Okay. So you should know if you meet or resist outer expectations, meet or resist inner expectations. I know we just did like a really high view of this, right? Nothing too in depth, right? So take a look at your paper. These are the four tendencies: upholder, questioner, obliger, and rebel. Okay? If you meet both outer and inner expectations, if you meet outer but you resist inner, if you resist outer but you meet inner, or if you resist outer and inner. Those are the options. The upholder. Upholders meet internal and external expectations. They want to know what is expected of them and do not want to let themselves or others down. Others can rely on upholders because they follow through with what they commit to and they don't need external accountability because they can handle that themselves. Upholders do struggle to meet expectations, however, when those expectations aren't clearly defined. So that's the thing. As long as they know what the expectation is, they are going to hit it. As long as they know what the deadline is and what they know is due at that time, they will hit the expectation. Okay? That is the upholder. Obligers meet external expectations, but they struggle with internal expectations. So as long as someone is telling them what to do, obligers feel the pressure to get things done and they do it successfully. But they don't feel that same pressure when it comes to their own expectations or goals. An obliger needs some form of accountability when it comes to their goals, okay? So they need someone to keep them accountable, something, or else they won't do things for themselves. The questioner resists external expectations and meets internal expectations. So questioners question everything they're told to do. They don't mind fulfilling expectations as long as those expectations make sense to them logically. For that reason, questioners are better at meeting their own expectations than the expectations of others, unless they're giving a solid logical reason for what they're doing. Questioners are motivated by reason, logic, and fairness above all else. If things do not make sense, they're not even going to do it. They're like, nope. But if it does, they're like, okay, this makes sense. I'll do it. I agree. And then the rebel. Rebels resist internal and external expectations. Above all else, rebels value their freedom of choice, independence, and identity. They resist inward and outward authority unless it aligns with their goals. And by goals here, I also mean like it's all about their identity. It's all about their identity and aligning with their goal of freedom and choice. Despite all resisting expectations, rebels can be productive people. Oh, but despite resisting all that was just typed wrong. Despite resisting all expectations, rebels can be productive people if they understand how to motivate themselves and align expectations with their values. Okay, so just because you resist internal expectations does not mean that you're just like totally lazy, don't do anything. They have to find a way to align themselves with their freedom, with their choice, with their independence, and tie everything back to the identity that it's creating for themselves. Okay? If you didn't know, I'm a rebel. Which tendency are you? I know a lot of people get surprised when I say that I'm a rebel. For those of you who are familiar with the four tendencies, a lot of people think that I should be an upholder because you guys see me as being very productive. I'm only productive because it is tied into my identity. And I do not like to do things that people tell me to do. And I don't even like to tell myself to do things. That's why I'm very choosy about the goals that I actually set for myself. Like New Year's goals and things like that, I keep my goals to a minimum. Even though I talk about goals today with you guys, I'm never the person who's like, let me do all of this in a year. I'm like, I'll do these two things because it's going to make me a better person at the end of the year. You know what I mean? Like that's the ones I'm focused on. So what is your tendency? Let's see. Obliger with serious rebel tendencies. See, the thing is with all four of these is that you're whatever one you are, you touch two others anyway. You know what I mean? Like being a rebel, right? I touch obliger and questioner, right? Because they're kind of like the Venn diagram with the four. So you are one, and then you might feel like you're also two in a way, just because there's only so many options here. So let's talk about using this information. The purpose of understanding our type is to learn and grow from it. Unlike other personality tests where you want to understand your own type as well as others to grow on a personal level, when it comes to your tendency, you want to know what you are so that you can set up proper accountability frameworks for yourself to manage your time, energy, and expectations. That's what this is all about, right? It's not about personal growth in terms of like becoming a better person. It's personal growth in terms of understanding what motivates you so that you can get things done in your life, right? And make sure it gets done. You know what I mean? You can set goals and make sure you're hitting them. So it's also great to be familiar with the other tendencies and know the tendencies of others that you work with, people at home and in your career, so that you know how to frame expectations for those that you rely on as well, okay? So upholders, their personal accountability is how they create personal accountability. As an upholder, you have a strong sense of personal accountability, which is great. Just make sure to set clear goals and give yourself a timeline or put some sort of tracking system into place so you see the progress that you are making. That is accountability enough for you. Now, working with an upholder. Upholders react well to internal and external accountability so long as they have clear expectations. So make a plan with them and they will execute on it. Check in on them and they will be glad to give you a status update or devise a tracking system that you can share with them, right? So upholders are the best. They're the best employees. They're the best spouses and children and everything, right? They do everything they say they're going to do as long as everything is clear. And they don't mind being micromanaged. They're like, yep, sure, here, this is what I was doing. Here, but check in, love it. They love it. They're so productive, just naturally productive. Obligers, in terms of personal accountability, as an obliger, you have a hard time keeping accountable to yourself. So don't. Reach out to a friend or coworker and make them your accountability buddy. There's no harm in asking for help and relying on others. Now, if you're working with an obliger, obligers need external accountability to get things done. So if you're working with one, touch base with them often on their project or whatever you're working on with them together. It would be a great idea to have a regular check-in, like sort of scheduled, like a reoccurring calendar event to help keep them accountable and moving in the right direction. So in a way, obligers need to be micromanaged, okay? So if you're working with one and you're like their manager, or if you have a child that's like this, right, you want to check in with them, they need to be micromanaged. And you know, if it's just someone at work that like you're also working on work with, maybe you're not an authority to them, but you can still act like an accountability buddy, and like they will feel much more comfortable doing their work because they've got someone watching over them. Questioners, in terms of personal accountability, as a questioner, you question all expectations and only act on what makes logical sense. Therefore, you sometimes resist others and are more likely to follow through on your own expectations because they matter to you. If you struggle to stick to your own expectations, make sure the goals that you are setting are tied to significant reasons that make sense to you. So like a generic thing for this would be like, if you're trying to like get healthy, right? You're like, oh, I want to set a goal to get healthy, right? Make sure you have it tied to something realistic, right? Like if you want to lose weight, be like, I want to lose this amount of weight because I want to be a better mom, right? Who's able to, you know, go on the slides with my kids and take care of them the way that they should be taken care of and be active and things like that, right? Tie it to something that makes logical sense for the outcome, not just a generic outcome of I'll just be thinner or I'll just be healthier, right? That is logically important, but it's better if you can get more specific. So working with a questioner. Questioners don't react well to external expectations unless those expectations make sense to them. So let them define their expectations internally and then check to ensure that you agree with them, right? So if you're working with them, let them set the expectations, right? And like maybe you can guide them a little bit, but like make sure they're like, yeah, I'm in with that. Or make sure you give them more than enough information to come to the conclusion that your expectations are valid. Then let them do their own thing. Try only to check on them at predefined intervals that they have also agreed or decided on. They don't need you looking over their shoulders. They're not really good with micromanagement, right? So questioners don't need to be micromanaged. Once they know what the expectation is and they agree to it, they'll get it done, okay? Finally, rebels. Personal accountability for a rebel. As a rebel, you resist any and all expectations. Instead, you focus on sticking to your ultimate value of freedom and choice. Being a rebel doesn't mean you can't meet expectations. It's just that you will choose which expectations yourself. with any goals you want to set for yourself, tie it to the identity it will help you cultivate. So, like, for example, here, if I can create this business, I can work from wherever and be totally self-sufficient. That's one of like the things in my head that people are like, "How are you rebel, Alexis? You run a business." Yeah, because working from home, running a passive income business helps me be totally self-sufficient and free and gives me more choice in my life. So it's tied to an identity that is totally aligned with my goals. That's why I can hold myself to that expectation. So working with a rebel, rebels don't react well to any expectations. In fact, they go against things if you tell them what they need to do. So they have to feel like they are free to do whatever they want and to do it in their own way. So trying to tell a rebel what to do or trying to keep them on your schedule or your process will only backfire. When approaching them with expectations, make sure to present your information in a way that appeals to their sense of freedom. So something like, if you can finish this by this time frame, you'll have more freedom to work on your own projects once that's done, right? So they'll be like, oh yeah, that does give me more freedom. That's why I should be on this schedule. You know what I mean? So just tie everything back to them. And I give these sort of examples just because I know rebels are like the hardest. Rebels are like the hardest to understand because it's like, how does a rebel get anything done if they don't have any expectations? It's just the way they manage them is different. Okay? How was the Four Tendencies? Okay, so there's much deeper insight to be gained from your tendency. So please do additional research on your own. I left sources in the description so you can get started. Okay. Let's see comments here. Someone said, I wonder if I'm more of a rebel than a questioner because I don't really like being told what to do, except it makes sense. It just has to make sense to me. So yeah, a rebel and a questioner both have that feeling, right? Because the making sense to you can mean more than one thing. If it just makes logical sense while your boss is telling you to do something, right? You're like, you need to do this because we have this meeting and this client is so big, it's part of our revenue and it's tied to your bonus, right? And they're like, got it, I'll do the work, right? But for like a rebel, it's like the reason has to be tied to their identity. It doesn't just have to be logical. It has to be tied to their values of freedom and choice, right? So if things just have to make sense, like you just have to know why, right? Then that would maybe make you more of a questioner. But if like the why doesn't matter, like I know this makes sense to you, but it's not important to me, like that is a rebel. So people are a bunch of rebels here. So Anna says that explains so much since obligers touch upholders and I need clear directions, but my rebel side hates micromanaging. Yeah, so that's it. Obligers and upholders tend to look alike because they meet outer expectations. Like at work, you might not be able to tell an upholder from an obliger because they'll always do the work because they're being kept accountable for things. The way you know the difference between an obliger and an upholder is if they're successful in their personal life. You know what I mean? Like if they can hit their own goals on their own. Becca says, I might be a questioning rebel. Like I said, rebel and questioners will look the same because a rebel will question things too. The idea here is that if something just makes logical sense, a questioner will do it. A rebel won't do things just because it's logical. Their why has to be tied to their identity. Like Alexis, if you create a successful business, then you can call yourself a successful creative entrepreneur. That's identity based, right? More so than Alexis, you create a business because you need to have a job. You know what I mean? If that's it, if you need to have a job, I could just go get a job. You know what I mean? Like if you need to make money, I could just go get a job. Like why would I do this choice over some other choice? It's because the identity that it cultivates. Rebels, it's tied to your identity. So, yep. Okay. So that was the Four Tendencies. Now, I realize that was a lot of info and we're almost 2 hours here. So what are you guys thinking right now, right? Do you like this? Did you guys enjoy this class, right? Do you feel like you know a little bit more about yourself? I know Enneagram is incredibly hard. Enneagram is really, when I made that slide that was like, this is challenging and you will find resistance, I was talking about the Enneagram. Enneagram is really, really personal. So that's why it's very hard for people. Like I said, I was mistyped after being correctly typed by my friend who is the Enneagram specialist. When she met me, she's like, you are an 8. And then in pure 8 fashion, I was like, You will not tell me what I am. You will tell me everything I need to know about the Enneagram and I will decide for myself. So then we went through this long, hard process of like deciding what I was. And then we ultimately landed on a 3. And the reason we landed on 3 is 3 and 8 look alike. And she had also told me something about an 8. She said that there was a famous person who was an 8 that I did not like. And so again, in 8 fashion, I was like, nope, you're not aligning me with that person. So I'm going to go with no. So we chose 8 because of 3, because that was the one I could live with being, right? But then once I read Ian Crone's book, The Road Back to You, which is linked in the description box, and I was like, oh my God, I am an 8. I am an 8. And what I found out was that the famous person who is often said that they are an 8. They haven't come out and like said anything about the Enneagram. The person who is attributed as being an 8, actually Ian Crone believes is actually a 6. He's like, he's a counterphobic 6, not an 8. So I'm like, okay, good. I can now live with my 8ness. Okay, so yeah, great information. It was great. It was awesome. Yeah, I hope you guys had tons of fun and that this information really helps you to make better plans, be a better person, see where you struggle, and sometimes just seeing the problem, just turning light on it helps it go away, helps you control it. So if your reaction is like some people in the comments right now, which is, wow, I learned a lot about myself. Now, how can I start putting this information into practice for the benefit of my business? Again, I think this is most important for business people. So if that's what you're thinking right now, this next section is for you. I want to introduce you to the CEO Strategy Planner. If you have not met it already, it is a set of strategic business planning inserts that I've recently launched. So the CEO Strategy Planner is a strategic business planner, over 60 undated print-on-demand inserts. It is the ultimate business planning tool. It's designed for creative entrepreneurs, small business owners, bloggers, YouTubers, podcasters, and social media influencers. The CEO Strategy Planner will help you create a vision for your business and break that vision down into manageable steps. It'll help you set clear objectives and outline plans that'll help you work more efficiently. And now that you know what your tendency is, you'll be able to create the accountability systems you need to follow through on your plans if you've ever struggled with those in the past. It's going to help you maximize your marketing efforts by organizing and outlining content, campaigns, and messages. And it'll help you keep a close eye on all your financial targets to grow your income, shrink your expenses, and get direct visibility to your profitability. So let me walk you through really quickly all the business planning inserts in here. So the business planning inserts here, you get a business plan divider, the executive summary, target market, brand vision, monthly objectives overview, yearly business plan, quarterly business plan, monthly business plan. For your business objectives, you get the objectives divider, the workflow chart, project planner, project budget, project tracker. Marketing plan inserts, marketing plan divider, content brainstorm, content planner, content outline, content tracker, campaign builder, financial plan, you get finances divider. P&L stands for profit and loss, yearly financial overview, monthly bill tracker, yearly bill tracker, income and expense tracker, savings tracker, and the donation tracker. Next, bonus downloads that come with this. Printable planner tabs. I have a whole set of printable planner tabs so you could create your own business planner with this and have all the sections. You also get the CEO cover and dashboard, inbox outbox dividers, monthly dividers, January through December. You get the CEO desktop wallpaper and the CEO smartphone wallpaper, okay? So miscellaneous other things you should know about this planner. The file prints half letter, A5, letter, and A4. It comes with detailed print instructions for each. It's undated, so you can use it year after year. And it's print on demand, so you have all the inserts you need whenever you need them. And it integrates nicely with the physical or digital calendar system, the digital planner of your choice, right? So these are business planning worksheets inserts, right? This is to help you go deep onto business planning if that's something that you need for your own business. And it works with any other system. You can use any calendar, any other time management system that you want, digital, on your phone, Google, whatever. If you use a planner, if you use a master planner, these are just supplemental inserts that are just for planning out important aspects of your business, okay? So CEO Strategy Planner is available. Download your copy today. There's a link in the description box. And for going through this class, use the code CEO Plans for $25 off your purchase, okay? So I wanted to give you guys another discount for being here with me live, interacting, spending your time with me, having fun with me. I am loving doing these classes for you guys, and I know this is an amazing resource for people. I'm sure there's already people here today that I know there are already people here that already own the CEO Strategy Planner. So if you're a business person, definitely think about this. this whole class was about making your business better by knowing yourself. Now make your business better by getting your plans out of your head onto paper so you can get down to business. Okay. So now let's go ahead and where am I going? Oops. Back here to me. Hello. How are you? It's been 2 hours. We're doing good. Let's do a little bit of follow-up Q&A, shall we? If you guys have any questions, we'll talk in a second. I'm just gonna. Where'd it go? Oh, here it is. There we go. Purchase your copy of the CEO Strategy Planner today. There's a link in the description, bit.ly/CEO Strategy Planner. Okay, and the code's in there as well if you need it. So let's see what I've got here with my comments. Let me open my comments too. Where'd they go? Here they are. Okay. Sam said the Four Tendencies really excited me the most. Yeah. So for a lot of people who are already naturally planners, like understanding how to create frameworks for your expectations and accountability are so important, right? Because so many of us like want to do big things. And, as a planner, no matter which one of the tendencies you are, you can still plan and execute. You just have to understand what motivates you. Mia says, I'm a little late, but I'm a type 3 INFP obliger. Excellent. These are such common, tests. So now you guys know what I am, so that, in future videos when I talk about being an 8 or being an ENTJ or being a rebel, you understand a little better too. So Kaylee says, this is perfect. I do alterations and my business is in very early stages. Excellent, Kaylee. Yeah, the CEO Strategy Planner is totally going to help you. It has literally everything you need to get started planning a business, whether you're getting started right now or you're a more experienced business person, right? I just designed these inserts for myself out of a need that after 5 years, I'm like, I need to be planning better. You know what I mean? 5 years later, still surviving, still doing great with my business and my passive income stuff. And it's like, you know what? I need something to make this even easier for me, right? So I designed them for myself first and foremost, and then I'm like, must give this to the world, right? So she also said that working backwards, like you mentioned in the beginning, here, let me add this to the broadcast, helped me realize that I am indeed a 3, INFJ, and obliger, right? Yeah, so there are, I wish I had that one. There was like a chart I had seen that was talking about like all the Myers-Briggs and the Enneagram stuff. I wonder if I can find it again and pull it up for you guys. Here. So for you guys, out of all of these, like, do you feel like which ones, Four Tendencies is probably the easiest one. Then Myers-Briggs and then Enneagram was probably the hardest, right? Like, who is still struggling with their type? Oh, here's the one I saw. Okay, let me see if I can open this. I'm going to see if I can open this and add it to the class really quickly, you guys. And we will, because I think it's just something that could just be interesting for us to see. No. Move down. Oops. Let's see. I'm just going to try to add this in here so we can see it. Actually, do I just open this? Let's see. Can I just open it? Open. There we are. You know what? We're going to go back to screen sharing and preview. Okay. So here is, this is from typerevolution.com. Okay. So this is going to show you guys the Myers-Briggs versus the Enneagram. So let's use me as an example. The type 8, it says that I could be a ESTP, I could be an ENTJ, which is what I am, or an ESTJ, okay? So if you know your Myers-Briggs, right, you might want to take a look at this and see if anything goes over. So I'm INTP, rebel, still not sure of Enneagram. So let's go take a look at this for I am for the birds. INTP. INTP right here. INTP. What were the numbers you circled for Enneagram? Because it says you could be a 5, a 6, or a 9. Anyone else have this issue too would be awesome. We can just like go through. And you guys can see that all right? Yeah, I think you can. I'm going to go up and see if I can find more people who are struggling with what their numbers were. Oh. Okay, so so Kaylee says weird, 3 does not line with INFJ. Now I'm confused. Now, again, somebody else made this, right? Somebody who's likely not the founders of Enneagram and Myers-Briggs, right? So they may not overlap. So 3 does not line with INFJ. Are you sure you're not an ENFJ? ENFJ is like a typical 3. You're sure you're an I. So let's say INFJ. 1, 2, and 9. So if you thought you were a 3, maybe you're a 2 or a 4. Like, okay, so something I know about 3s. 3s, they're the performer. So are you like the person who is, I think of the 3 as being the ultimate networker. Like this is a person who will go to a networking event and they will own the entire room. Everybody will know exactly what they do and who they are. And they will, I hate to say it so poorly like this, but like they can sometimes to me feel like the person who is kind of throwing their accomplishments in your face. Right? That's one of the things that made me realize that I definitely wasn't a 3, that I was an 8, because an 8 is less likely to do that. They will only use their status if they really need to. A lot of times, like people, I'm definitely the person that like if people like ask me what I do, I'm like, oh, I create media online. Like I don't tell people, and you guys are probably watching me, you're like, what? That's not what you do. But it's like I don't need to use what I do as like as a sense of power. You know what I mean? Like, so sometimes that's like a 3. So Sam says, I was all over the place with that Enneagram. According to this chart, I'm also possibly a 6. So what was Sam, what were you again? Why is type 6 the most common? I have no clue. I'm sure there's some reason about it. I don't know. But yeah, and I don't know if it's that it's most common, but it's like maybe they're the most adaptable, right? Okay, let me see if I can find Sam's Myers-Briggs. It was an INFP. Okay, INFP. Here we go. So you could be a 4, you could be a 6, or you could be a 9. INFP. Huh. Oh, you realize you're an IN. Yeah. I was an INFJ, then I strongly an INFP. Now I realized I'm a centrist INFP. Okay, INFP. And what did you think, Sam, that you were? 4, 6, and 9. Did we think you were a 5, Sam? What is saying a 5 is? An INTJ or an INTP? Yeah, 5 would absolutely have to be an I. So yeah, you guys, you could be anything. Okay, so Kaylee, that's a great way to put it. You don't throw it in their faces to show they're better than you. You just use it to prove you're successful, which is really what I mean by that, right? Now, let's be clear. There could be people who are 3s that throw things in their faces, people's faces, right? 3s, that's their main function, not main function, but their like core desire weakness. They feel like they need to prove themselves in order to be valuable to people. So that's definitely a 3 thing. So So what were we struggling with Kaylee? We didn't think INFJ. Yeah, honestly, Kaylee, you might be an ENFJ. Why do you think you're an I and not an E? Oh, something else that I just kind of know from just like knowing things. Sometimes, okay, INFJ is considered the most rare personality. Sometimes, in hearing that information, people will claim that they are an INFJ in order to feel more unique, right? So I'm not saying that anyone's doing this, right? But that's one of those things to watch out for. A lot of people like to be like, I'm an INFJ, and they might not actually be an INFJ. And that goes really for any type. But that's something that I know has happened in the past, right? Is that people will adjust their, and look, I had to adjust my type too, right? I didn't want to be the thing that someone told me was related to somebody I didn't like. And, so sometimes we do adjust these things to be what we would like to be, but aren't actually the way we take action. Can we review E and I super quickly? Yep. So E and I, E is extrovert and I is introvert. So the biggest thing that I think about E and I is the way that you are energized. Are you the kind of person who, when you're in a group situation, you are like, oh my God, I'm riding high? Like if you went to like in this group class, we're not all together, but like, are you like excited being here? Like imagine we were all in a room together. Would the idea of us all being in a room together talking live be exciting to you? Or would it be like, oh my God, that's my worst? Like I'm going to be exhausted, right? Does having to keep up with a bunch of people at one time, right, make you excited? Like, do you feed off other people's energy or you like other people drain your energy? That's the difference between E and I. A lot of people think that it means you're an extrovert or an introvert. That's the words, Alexis, right? Yeah. A lot of people think it means you're outgoing. Outgoing, that's the word. Or not. But that's not necessarily. You can be an outgoing introvert. That's it. Okay, so I am Fortibird says 8 does not line up with INTP, but the three numbers I chose were 1, 8, and 8. Wait, why do you have 8 twice? Yeah, so Keely, that's interesting to think, right? So it doesn't excite you, but you would be as involved as you are now. An introvert would probably struggle to be active. It's hard to say. It really is hard to say. Again, we just did like a very short sort of class on this, you know what I mean? And this does not, just because your Myers-Briggs doesn't line up with your Enneagram does not mean that it's not, that you do have wrong numbers. So I just want to make sure we're not like, let's not think about that too hard. It's just like if you were struggling and you're like, oh, I thought I was, this number and it lines up with what I feel like I am for my Myers-Briggs, then it might just be extra confirmation for you, and that's all. Like I said, being the extrovert introvert thing for me, like after I get off this call, I'm going to be excited for a while and then I'll get tired. An introvert would just be exhausted through the whole thing. Here we go. After a concert, I ride the high for hours, but after visiting family during the holidays, I need to hide out for a while. LOL. So that might be that might see, and you might be different in different situations. A lot of people are. So a concert, that's a good example of you're being somewhere with a lot of people and you might be interacting with people and you ride a high for a while. Might be an E then. Because that's like me, right? I mean, everyone gets exhausted when they have to deal with people, right? Like there's a point you reach where you get drained. But does having an interaction with people get you excited or make you feel more tired? Okay, Val says, mine doesn't align, but I think it's right. Good, that's fine. It can still be, you can be right with two different ones, right? Like I said, this was just something that somebody came up with. And it could be helpful or it could just not be helpful. Has everyone given this a thumbs up? Okay, so I guess we're starting to dwindle down now. We're a little bit over 2 hours. So the last thing I really want to talk about with you guys is that I'm going to be doing, like I said, these live classes every Saturday, and starting next week. Well, I'm really diving deep into business planning next week. So let me pull up what my live class was. Live schedule. Let's see, live. Um, So Saturday, April 11th, I'm doing the ideal customer avatar. So defining your ideal customer for business planning. So this is something where if you're a business person, you definitely want to be in it. We're going to be working through more of the CEO strategy planner. And then the week after that, the 18th, we're doing content keyword research, right? This was something we talked about doing in the class last week. How to research and use the best SEO optimized keywords for your brand and business. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to center these as much around business people as I can. If you're not a business person, you can absolutely still join, because there's a lot of things for a lot of people's career that still overlap with this, but we're just going to be working through worksheets in the CEO strategy planner together a little bit more, giving you guys some additional info to help you make the most of those. So definitely join me if you are interested in those topics. I am for the bird said, good gravy, any type of group of people I want to get away from and exhaust me, even if it's just two. Then you're definitely an introvert. Definitely. Okay, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me for today's class. I hope you enjoyed it. There will be a replay, same link. Everything looks like it went smoothly today, which is awesome. You know what I think is so funny? I want to say this before I go, because I've just been holding on to this. I've been watching shows that, I don't know, have any of you guys been watching shows like late night shows and different, talk shows and stuff where I guess they go live or whatnot, and so they can't go into their studios, so they're working from home right now. I was watching The Walking Dead, and then after The Walking Dead, you guys may know, is The Talking Dead with Chris Hardwick, and I'm like so taken aback with how many of these shows are going like live on TV, and it looks like people are on their phone. I'm like, do people not have like good streaming setups? Like, I'm impressed. Like, are you guys impressed with this setup? Like, is this good quality for you? Like with the video and the audio? Like, is everything been doing well, like for you guys? Like, obviously, I mean, I think everything looks good. It looks good down here for me when I'm looking at my little preview down here on my phone. But I'm just like so surprised that all of these shows are going live, and the best one I've seen so far is Colbert. Colbert is doing pretty good on his streaming, whatever he's got going on. Like, everything looks pretty good with him. His only issue is that when he has guests on, sometimes he's turned the wrong way. Like, the talking heads are the wrong way. Which I'm like, why is someone not fixing that for him? Like swapping the location of the video feeds. Someone said, what time on Saturdays? We're doing this on 2 p.m. Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern time. So the same time this started, the same time the other one started. And if you're on my email list, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to send out an email on Saturday mornings, probably an hour before, like I have been doing, maybe a little bit earlier, just to remind people. I have to decide. I don't want to over email you guys and let you guys know, hey, we've got this coming up on Sunday. I think it's probably I'm just assuming that everyone's stuck at home. And if you get an email on a Saturday morning and you look at it and you're like, I like this topic, I'm going to join, you will click the button and just join. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, Stephen Colbert's, his isn't looking bad. But there's just been some where I'm just like, why does Alexis at home in her office have a better stream than like an actual TV show? Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I'm like, don't they have professionals? Like Chris Hardwick's seems to have no lighting. I'm like, please order him studio lighting. Like, he looks like he's on a webcam that's like not like, I'm on a webcam too right now, but I've got a decent webcam. Like, are they not gonna like invest in supplies for him? I felt so bad. Okay, Edie said, I just took Enneagram online and I got an 8 ENTJ questionnaire. Awesome. Yeah, 8 and that's me. 8 ENTJ. I'm just a rebel, Which is funny because like some of the things are like always having to have choices. Like, remember I just argued that I don't like to have choices, but it's not for me. it's not the, it's the ultimate freedom, right? Like the time, location freedom that's more important to me. I like to have, like, I like to know things, certain things are settled, but it's like, yeah, there's everyone's blends of all these things. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to be 100% accurate. Um, Salsa said, Linda says, I don't mind a reminder during the week though. Yes, your stream rocks. See, I just don't, this is my thing. I would love to let you guys know ahead of time more often because then I feel like more people will come live and that'll be more fun. But I also don't want to what do you guys think? If you guys think I should have an email during the week that's like, hey, this is coming up on Saturday, I will. I was just hoping I could just make one video, like just one announcement, and then you guys would just know ongoing Saturdays live, most Saturdays, right? If I'm not going to go Saturday, I'll post something and let you guys know. But for now, I do have like a couple of weeks of content, like kind of, you know, in the works. So we'll see how long this lasts. Hopefully, I won't be doing this for the rest of the year. But I just feel like it's an easy thing for me to do. Easy enough to replace my weekly video with a weekly live, and then we still have a video. And in fact, I might actually take this class. I'm thinking about taking it and breaking it down into like 3 videos and just posting it so people can just watch the one they want. But Linda says, how long does the test take? Which test? All of them? I mean, probably take like 15, 20 minutes, I would assume. All except for like the Four Tendencies test. I think that one's like a 5-minute test. But Enneagram is like a hard one. Enneagram is like, I could take an Enneagram test and I could get like all different things. It's really difficult. If you really are interested in the Enneagram, I definitely recommend that book, The Road Back to You. One caveat with that book I just like to make people aware of is that it is written by a guy, Ian Crone, who is taking the Enneagram from a very Christian perspective. If you're someone who's familiar with Enneagram, you may have noticed that there's a strong influence of Christian perspective in the Enneagram, like to the extent that some people believe that the Enneagram is like a test for Christians or made by Christians. It's absolutely not. That's like false information. There just has been like a revival of Enneagram interest by, maybe we'll say, like some influential Christian people who are like, oh, use this test. This is the best, like, in business, I feel like Myers-Briggs is like one that's always kind of pushed. But it seems like there was like a revival of Enneagram within a Christian community. And so a lot of people think that means that the Enneagram is Christian related. And that's why I kind of wanted to make that point in the beginning, that it really isn't. It's just a tool that a lot of Christian people are kind of passing around like, hey, this is cool. My pastor talked about this, or you know what I mean? Like that's kind of what it is. And Ian Crone is definitely one of those people. He also has a podcast that I was listening to before I bought the book. I cannot remember what it is called. I deeply apologize. But you could probably look it up just by looking up his name, Ian Crone podcast. But it is like, it's all about Enneagram types. So yeah. And he like interviews different numbers. And that was one of my things that my friend who is the Enneagram girl was like, you should listen to his podcast and listen to the different types and see if it applies to you. Because there's lots of different situations, like lots of times different numbers will look a different way. So, okay, you guys, I'm so glad you guys were here today and enjoyed this. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you haven't already. I really appreciate seeing you guys, and I can't wait to see you guys next week for our customer avatar video if you're interested in that. I will consider sending out an email during the week to my email list to let you guys know that it's coming. But yeah, hope to see you soon. Bye!